Guys, get ready. This is former WWE superstar Simon Dean, also, well, kind of former superstar Nova, and I was also Hollywood Nova. I had like a bunch of different names. But anyway, get ready, get set, because we're going on a ride. It's going to take about 2.5 hours, a total career introspective. It should be kind of cool. You guys are sending in some questions. We're going to answer those too. It's all taking place on Hannibal TV. So sit back, relax, chill out. Let's get one-on-one a little bit, or one-on-two, or one-on-three, or whatever you guys want to do. I'm good. So Hannibal TV, turn up the volume. I'm yours for the next couple hours. Let's get it done.
We're here with Nova, who was also known as Simon Dean, and he was in WWE and ECW, and he was also WWE Talent Relations for a while, which we'll get into after. But to start this off, do you want to tell us a little bit about what your childhood was like?
Sure. What's up, guys? Devin, thanks for having me again. It's cool to be on the series here. A lot of the guys who you've done this with before have spoke highly of you. I've known you for quite some time. You've always been a good dude, stand up. So that's why I have you in my home, giving you some of the crystal light over there, living the good life. If you go all the way back, I was a wrestling fan growing up. I come from Toms River, New Jersey. I had a normal childhood. Mom and dad, both blue-collar people, worked really hard. My dad was in a factory. Then he worked at his own garage door business. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, raising the boys. Again, I have a twin brother named Donnie B. He was in the business too. He promoted shows for a while and managed a lot of the heels on the Northeast indie wrestling scene, like Rick Ratchet, a bunch of other guys. And then I have a younger brother too. He's a detective. Donnie's a cop, a patrolman, and my little brother's a detective. Oh, wow. So they're both in police force. That's why every now and then you'll see me make a post on Facebook, always pro-cop, pro-authority, pro-law enforcement. Them and a lot of other my friends are in that industry, and I support it 100%. Growing up, huge Northeast wrestling fan, so WWF was my life. As a kid, WWF stars were larger than life to me. I saw WCW. To me, the WCW, the NWA back then, the 605 wrestling, TBS, I used to watch that. Those were the guys I thought were doing the real wrestling. Like, they were the hard, tough, real wrestlers. And the WWF guys were just larger-than-life superstars. But, you know, our wrestling in our house probably got banned every other week. Obviously, it didn't work. But yeah, just learned how to work hard. I had my first full-time job when I was 15 years old. And I'm 46 now, and I've worked full-time since. Doing something always. I've never went without a check. So I think my mom and dad showed us that. My dad passed away a few years ago. My mom still going strong in New Jersey. My brothers, my nieces and nephews, and everybody. So.
Is there any wrestlers that you particularly liked in those days?
Yeah, I was a big fan of all the big popular ones growing up. Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Randy Savage, Jake. A wrestler who I hated growing up, and this is a funny story, was Brutus the Barber Beefcake. I went to WrestleMania 4 at Trump Plaza in Atlantic City. And I remember going there, and me and my brothers getting out of the car to go to the show, our mom and dad, and we saw Brutus getting out of a taxi, and he was running by us, and we asked him for his autograph. And he turned around, and I believe he gave us a finger or said, F you, because he was running late, I guess, and ran into the building. So I hated him forever until like 20 years later when I was on a show with him. I told him the story, and he looked right at me, and my brother was like, do you guys still want the autograph? We're like, nah, we're good, Brutus. No harm, no foul. But it was just, you know, I hated, it's weird. Growing up as a kid, all the guys I liked, later on when I got in the business and I knew the business, I started liking the guys more who I didn't like as a kid growing up. And not that I didn't like my favorites anymore, but I just looked at them differently. The guys who I became more enamored with later on, once I got in it, were not the ones that were flashing, but they were more steak, and earlier on it was more sizzle. So.
And at what point did you decide you wanted to be a wrestler?
I don't know, I'm still second guessing that decision. When I was finishing my senior year in high school, there was a good buddy of mine, Rich Lom. He was a lifelong wrestling fan too. We hung out. We had a backyard wrestling thing we made at his house. We constructed a wrestling ring in his basement, complete with, we took garage door springs and put them around the concrete posts and tied ropes to them so we could do slingshot suplexes and stuff. We had title belts, the whole deal. Senior year of high school, he was going to go to the Hart Camp. So this is I graduated in 1990.
Okay.
This is 2018, so it's 28 years ago. So when he was getting ready to go to the Hart Camp, there was a wrestling school that opened up in Bricktown, New Jersey. So I was 19 at the time. I just started Ocean County College, going for a math degree. And Iron Mike Sharpe opened up a wrestling school in Bricktown, New Jersey. You obviously know Mike because you're Canadian also. But he opened up a school there. Rich signed up, started going to the school. This is beginning of 2001. And me and my brother used to go with him and sit and watch, just as fans. We'd watch him practice. So there was another guy named there, Tom Rumsby. He was the original executioner. He was running the school also. So him and Mike just kept asking us if we wanted to try it. So one day I got in the ring and gave it a shot. So did Donnie B. I think he lasted about 2 lessons, and he didn't want to do the physical part of it. This isn't for everybody, as you know too. I mean, there's plenty of people, and we'll get into this later on, why it's not such a bad thing to find out this isn't for you. But I was hooked. Started wrestling at Iron Mike Sharpe School at the age of 19 years old in late 2001. And God rest his soul to Iron Mike Sharpe. He passed away a few years ago, and he was. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have the life I had today because he's the one that set me on the path.
And if you were a WWF Superstars fan, you'd know who he was. But for anyone that's watching this that's maybe a little younger, could you tell us a little bit about him? Yeah,
Iron Mike was billed as Canada's greatest athlete. He was a big, burly guy, about 6'3", 280. His claim to fame, he wore this black leather armband. And he had, actually the original story was the first armband he ever had, he got it from Andre. Andre cut off one of his boot tops and gave him that to lace up for the forearm protector. But Mike had this eternally injured forearm. Mike was an enhancement talent, as you call him, but he was almost like a policeman of sorts, because a lot of times he got built up to be the guy that mid-level baby faces have to work against, especially on house shoe loops, to get to the next level. His name carried a ton of weight. Early on in my wrestling career, when I used to go up and do TV matches, and this is like 92, 93, I guess, everybody who was up there, Sergeant Slaughter, Guerrero, Pat, Tim White, everybody knew Mike Sharpe. So the minute we told him we were one of Mike's guys, we were over. So none of us were really good. We were okay. We were passable. But, you couldn't tell us that back then. But Mike his name opened up a lot of doors. Totally different than a lot of wrestling schools are today.
And Hogan actually writes a bit about him in his book, that he was a little bit obsessive-compulsive.
Oh, dude. Mike was a weird... Look, I love Mike. He was great to us, but he was... for the practices, he didn't get in the ring a whole lot with us early on, but he would always, put his outfit on, his oil, and he'd be putting his armband on, and the stories... Howard Finkel used to tell me the stories how the arena would be done, the shows would be over, and they would all leave and go to the next town. They'd get phone calls a couple hours later that Mike Sharpe was still locked in the building, just getting out of the shower at 1 o'clock in the morning. But Mike, a lot of nights after we were done to school, me, Donnie B, Rick Ratchet, Lupus, Goon Dorsey, Rocco Dorsey, we'd all get done training. We'd go to Denny's and eat, and then go back to the school afterwards and pick up cars 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'm not kidding you, dude. He'd be in there doing calisthenics and all these weird exercises. We'd watch him through the window by himself, nobody else in school. Full gimmick, full outfit, sweating up a storm, have chairs in his hands, doing tricep extensions, all this other stuff. He was an odd cat, but again, he was the godfather to us all back then. Yeah. He got us all a start. It sucked the way he went out. He went out in a retirement home, almost like a halfway house years later, and it sucked. I tried to find him for years. I wanted to invite him to my wedding when I got married in Hamilton. And me and Howard Finkel, neither one of us could track him down. We tried. And I miss Mike. The best friendships I have in the business to this day are the ones I made at Iron Mike Sharpe's Wrestling School in 1992. Think about that. 25 years plus. The guys I talk to almost every single day or every other day are a lot of the guys that I met, 5 or 6 of them from that school.
I forget who it was against now, but I seem to recall someone told me he was in a backstage fight or something at one point in WWE.
He probably could have been. I don't think it would have lasted long, because Mike was that weird, old man strength, that. He was that barrel-chested guy. I mean, he chopped me a couple times and forearmed me. Yeah. Man, I went back to the future on those hits. I mean, that's just one of those things. He's like Kowalski, the same way as Killer, or maybe Pretty Boy Larry Sharpe in his early days. It's not like today where you get. Look, I'm just calling a spade. Some goofy, failed guy who went to wrestling school for 6 months. He sucked. He couldn't make it. And then he goes open up his own wrestling school. That's not how it was. Do I think it should be that way again? To a degree. But Mike was He was all business, man. He was a great hand, too. He really was. Watch his stuff on the network. Go find some Iron Mike Sharpe and just watch him. He was a grown man who could kick ass in the ring. He was legitimately tough. And he was the perfect example of wrestlers who worked their whole life to get to WWF at the time, to end their careers there. Where now, I think almost everybody is under the impression that, well, I'm just going to get in, I don't know, you can be found walking down the sidewalk, or you want to, I don't know how these guys get found now, but they're starting their careers at WWE.
Right.
And, you know, they might be in a year, they might be in 10 years, but back then, you had to cut your teeth, all the territories, and then you get the big shot to go to New York.
Yeah. And
that's not how it is anymore.
Was your wrestling name always Nova when you started, or was there any other gimmicks?
No, it was always Supernova. I was comic books from day one. My 2 gimmicks I originally was going to do when I first started, I was going to do like an 80s throwback thing. I was either going to be like, you know, dress up like Boy George or Billy Idol or George Michael and be like an 80s guy, or a disco dancer. I wanted to do something like that. And then I was always been a huge comic book fan. And I was sitting home in my room one day. This is like 2 weeks before I debuted on Mike Sharpe's school show, because Mike used to have school shows. And I had all these pretty high dollar comic books hanging on my wall. And I just looked at them and I was like, there's never been a superhero. So my mom helped me sew my knee pads together. I got a cape. I had goofy makeup, the whole deal. And I shaved lines in my head like Brian Bosworth. And I put makeup in that, this whole deal. And I just came up with the name Supernova. And actually, I wanted to be Nova, and Mike Sharpe said, you should be Supernova. And I made this whole comic book cover, 8x10 thing and all that, and that was it.
And I heard your first match was against Pablo Marquez.
In ECW.
Okay.
My first match in ECW was Pablo. My very first pro wrestling match ever was against a guy named Sean Boyd, the Nomad. He didn't get to the next level, but Sean was a good friend of ours from New Jersey, Tom Zimmer. He went to Mike Sharpe's school also. So that I remember like that was yesterday, man. 12 concussions, and I still remember like it was yesterday, just going over that match for a week and getting it together. And I think I've watched that only 2 times over the last 25 years. I don't even know where it is. But, yeah, that was the one that started off. And Pablo was my first one, ECW, though.
And you worked for Northeast Wrestling. They've become pretty big now. How were they in those days?
Absolutely loved them. Mike O'Brien, class act, great promoter, draws great houses. That's a funny story. There was a guy named Johnny Handsome, Dan Nubile, who used to go to Iron Mike Sharpe's wrestling school. But Danny was getting booked on the independents. So one day he called me and said, hey, I have a show in Poughkeepsie, New York. It was like a 3-hour drive from where I lived. He goes, they need 2 guys that night to wrestle these guys named Max Crimson and Jimmy Dio. And they were known at that time on the Northeast Indies as guys who weren't really the most technically skilled wrestlers. They were bigger guys who just bounced people around and beat them. So I said, okay, I'll come. So I go with Danny to the show. Max Crimson and Jimmy Dio got snowed out. They couldn't make it to the show. So Mike O'Brien, first time meeting, he puts me and Johnny Handsome one-on-one. We had a great match. He loved it. And I was married to Johnny Handsome on every single Northeast Wrestling show after that. Mike O'Brien, I love the guy. He was the first promoter to ever pay me $150 for a night. And this is like 2003. I couldn't believe it. I thought I was a millionaire up until that point. That's still a lot for today. It is. I mean, he was the first guy to take care of me. We main evented the Poughkeepsie Mid-Hudson Civic Center, me and Dan, in a ladder match. I remember doing that. But yeah, Mike O'Brien, great guy. Always drew great houses. Whenever I could steal an independent show every now and then, even during ECW times, Mike would always take care of me. He actually put me in the Northeast Wrestling. You owe me a plaque, Mike O'Brien. The Northeast Wrestling Hall of Fame, like 2 years ago, or maybe a year ago. I just never got the plaque yet. I just remembered that. But yeah, he helped a lot of guys too. Like he helped Lawler get with his bookings. Dusty, he loved Dusty. He was good to a lot of the boys, man. He draws monster houses, and he just does it right. Always has. I want to wrestle. I'm going to try to next summer when I go do my Jersey trip. I'm going to try to schedule it around 1 or 2 of his events so I can do some of those. I like Mike. If I'm still wrestling by then. I might not be, and we'll get into that later on. But
And you had some WWF, I guess, enhancement matches when you first started as well.
Yeah, that's how this started. I mean, you're old enough to remember, kind of, Devin. That's how you used to break in the business. I mean, you certainly didn't start, and then 2 weeks later, you're getting a push wrestling on TV. Like, you cut your teeth, you went up to a school, Mike Sharpe would get the call from WWE when they needed extras, and you went up and you did enhancement matches. When I first went up there, it was under my real name, Mike Bucci. I wrestled Adam Bomb, Ludwig Borga, the Head Shrinkers, Mr. Hughes, the Quebecers. I mean, tons of guys. And you'd go up there, and it's not Saturday morning wrestling show. So it'd be Wrestling Challenge or Wrestling Superstars. You know, you basically, Kevin Nash, I wrestled a bunch of guys, and it was just like you get to talk to them for 2 minutes, and they tell you what they're going to do to you, and you say, okay. You're the tomato can, you go out there to make them look good. They don't really do that anymore. Every now and then you'll see them try to do it on Raw, and when they do it on Raw, it's not commonplace, so it sticks out so sorely. Like, wait a minute, what's this next? It just looks weird. But yeah, that's how you started, man. I mean, that's where I first met Guerrero and Sarge and Blackjack and all those guys. And sure as hell, 10, 15 years later, when I was back in WWE, every single one of those guys remembered me for when I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that Tony Guerrero, hey, the Michael Bucci. I was like, hey, how you doing, Tony? But yeah, man, that's how you started. That's not how it is today. Again, I'm not that's the nature of what this has become. But back then, that was exactly how you got your start.
Did anyone take advantage of you, or were they all pretty good?
They were all good except Ludwig Borga, 1000%. You go on the WWE Network and type in Ludwig Borga or type in Mike Bucci. This match was 21 seconds old, and no, not even, maybe 6 seconds into it, he came flying across the corner, clotheslined me in the head, full blast, and he absolutely knocked me out and gave me a concussion right on my feet. I couldn't even stand up. I didn't know what was going on. And when we get in the back, you know, some of the things didn't go there as supposed to, and he's asking me about it, and I said, I don't remember being out there. And he said, oh, well, if you got your belt wrong, and he speaks in a really heavy Finnish accent, you should have told me. And I maybe had a year under my belt at that point. I didn't even know you were allowed to do that. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. He was cool. It's just one of those things. It just zigs. I don't think the majority of, and we can go over the litany of injuries I've had, but for the most part, they've all been zig when you should zag. I've always been skilled enough to a degree to where I could always tell if someone was going to be a liberty taker, but I've never been in that situation ever. Even with all the hookers and the fighters and you obviously know what I mean by hooker, right? Yeah, you do. Shooters with tougher guys, you know, even your Benoits, Bobs, Fitz, all these other guys who could do it. They never did. Like, I never gave them reason to. I was never an asshole. I was easy to get along with. I always wanted to work for the match. But there were certainly guys I was in the ring who were dangerous because they just were not good. That's a different category, though. So, but early on, you get your bell rung a couple times. I mean, I saw some of the superstars. I saw Yokozuna pancake a couple guys who were disrespectful. I saw the Quebecers, Pierre bouncing off of guys when they were disrespectful, I guess, or just an accident. But there were definitely some of the dudes there who got clobbered. But sometimes when the guys would hurt somebody, I watched Mabel, Big Vis, and God rest his soul, I love you, Vis. I watched him accidentally clock someone one night in a job match, and he hurt the guy. And then I watched Vis with my own eyes go up to the guy afterwards and palm him a couple $100 out of his own pocket to take care of him because he hurt him.
So how did you get hooked up with ECW?
I was at a show for New Jack City Wrestling. It was co-owned by my brother Donnie B. I was in a tag team match that night with a guy named Rockin' Rico. I had been going to the ECW shows because Stevie was on them, and it was the big underground buzz. This is like beginning of '95. I used to go in like '94 and watch. So I'm on the show. The main event that day was Mikey Whipwreck versus Raven. One of the people in the merchandise stand pulled me aside after my match and said, hey, Scotty wants to talk to you. All I had done at that point was go up to Raven and said hello. I called Stevie really quick. I'm like, what do you think he wants to talk to me about? He's like, dude, I don't know, go ask him. So I cornered Raven, went up to him and said, what's going on? He said, hey man, you know, what is your act, dude? Is like you supposed to be like a superhero? I said, yeah, like Adam West Batman, like not a serious superhero. He goes, man, I love this. And he told me they were getting a group together in ECW, a bunch of misfits, and he was gonna lead it. I said, okay, this could be something. So he said, I'll tell you what, just put an entrance tape together, a tape of your entrances, because I used to run to the ring with all these kids, and I'd do cartwheels, and I had cape and shit. And I said, huh? you don't want the matches? He goes, no, just the entrances. I said, okay. He goes, bring it to Moon Dancers and drop it off for me. I work there during the week. Okay, I put the tape together. I go near to Philadelphia looking for something called Moon Dancers. I didn't know what it was. It was a strip club. He was a DJ there. I went to Moon Dancers, dropped off the tape. Thought I'd never hear from him again. 2 days later, my mom called. I'm at home, and my mom said that, hey, there's a guy named Raven on the answering machine. And of course, my mom has no idea about any of this stuff. She knows I'm wrestling, but she doesn't know who Raven is. So I call him up. He says, hey man, Tommy and Tazz love your tape. And I had met Dreamer before at some independent shows. I knew him. Come on down to the ECW arena at the next show and just find me. And that's a lot easier said than done. Again, I'm 46. I've traveled the globe. I've seen and done a lot. To this day, the single most intimidating moment of my life was going to the ECW arena for that show and walking towards that curtain and getting ahead of, I think it was Ronnie from Atlas who was there. I said, hey, can you go back and tell Scotty that Nova's here? He came back 30 seconds later and said, hey, come on back. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. I walked back there. First person I was Beulah. She was back there. I said, hey, I saw your tape. It's great. Talked to her for a little bit. Dreamer came around with a mouthful of hot dog. He had 2 hot dogs in his hand. He goes, hey man, your tape is great. We think you could add something to Scotty's act. The job doesn't pay shit. Here's a couple hot dogs, your first check. And I just took the hot dogs, looked at them, I go, huh? So I didn't start right then. I had to keep going to the shows for a while. I brought my gear, did some run-ins with Raven and Meanie and Stevie. We were all gelling. And then about 2 months into that, I wrestled Bubba one-on-one at Body Slammer's gym in Reading. And then after that, I was pretty much on the shows. My early deal was I used to get 25, 50 bucks a night, get to the shows however you can. And that's how ECW was. I mean, you came, you worked hard, you had a great environment, which we'll talk about more ECW. But that's how I got in.
And Tracy Smothers last night was telling us you were part of his little pre-show training
Oh God,
session.
yes. There's nobody. If I'm telling right now that what is it? The Mega Millions tomorrow is $470 million. If I win that, I'm going to put enough money in Tracy Smothers' hand, and I'm saying this on the camera, so he never has to work another day in his life ever. That's how good he was to everybody. Tracy Smothers deserved more from the wrestling business. He was a great friend to all of us. I was usually the first one in the ring every day, if not the second one, along with Bill Wiles, Danny Doring, Chetty, all of us, wrestling before the show, putting our time. And I'm talking full-blown matches. I mean, we're going hard, 30 minutes, an hour and a half before these doors opened up, training and working and then putting these matches on, getting our training in. After done setting up the ring, after driving to these shows, I mean, we definitely paid our dues, all of us, that whole gang. And we loved it. I mean, Tracy was there for all of us. He led the workouts. When locals came around, we brought them in and we worked out with them if they wanted to get a spot. If they were rude or if they weren't doing the right thing, then sometimes, you know, the symbol would go in and Chetty would get them or somebody would stretch them. I never really had to do that. That wasn't my thing. Some of the guys were much better amateur wrestlers. So nobody ever beat anybody to death. Like, we weren't like beating them and punching them in there. I mean, that came later on with the fans, when we used to beat up the fans. That's a whole nother story. But as far as the pre-show workouts, if you came in and you kept your nose clean, you were cool with everybody, and you kept showing up, we usually try to find a spot for you. So, did you ever come to any of the shows? But you're a little bit younger, so it was right before your generation jump. Yeah.
What were your thoughts on New Jack in those days?
Here's the thing. I personally never had any incident with New Jack ever. Jerome Young was always cool to me. Jack was always cool. He actually, I'll tell you a funny story. There was a pay-per-view one time. So here's the thing. I always thought if you didn't fuck with Jack, he didn't fuck with you back. That's just how it was. I never saw New Jack ever, and never, ever saw him go up to anybody out of the clear blue and just start hitting them or attacking them. People used to push his buttons or attack them or take liberty or whatever it may be. But, you know, I actually did a pay-per-view one time. Me and Chetty wrestled, I think Simon Diamond and, I can't remember, Swinger maybe, or the Baldies or something it was. And it was a pay-per-view. I want to say it was Chicago. First 10 seconds of the match, Chetty's back blows out on him. He couldn't feel his legs. He rolled out of the ring. We still on live pay-per-view. At the end of the match, New Jack was supposed to come in and hit all the bad guys, and we powder and why. Somehow this whole thing went out the window. I stood in there like helping New Jack hit all the guys at the end of the match. He easily could have turned on me and beat me up too. He didn't. And at the end of it, like, he told me, hey, look, man, you know, I said, you're 100% right. He absolutely could have to protect his character and keep it strong. He didn't. He was cool to me. Again, I never saw Jack ever take liberties with anybody. You know, he was he showed up every night. He did. New Jack knows how to wrestle too. I don't want to dime his gimmick out here, but then, you know, I don't know if I'll ever cross paths with him again. If I do, I'll be cool with him. He's cool dude. He was always cool to me, but I don't want to expose his myth. New Jack can wrestle.
Yeah.
If people don't know that, like, I've seen New Jack do hammerlocks, arm bars, hip toss. I've seen him do it all in the ring before shows. I asked him about it one day, and he simply said, nobody would pay to see me do that. And I was like, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. You have to wrestle like you look. When you go see Guns N' Roses, you want to hear Welcome to the Jungle. You want to hear, you want to see the hits. That's what they're known for. That's what New Jack was known for. But even with the stuff with Vic Grimes and some of these other guys, like, those guys all, like, I don't know. I mean, I never saw Jack ever do something to somebody where he wasn't antagonized. I just didn't.
And what about Todd Gordon? What did you think of him?
Todd, I knew Todd was always cool to me. I mean, again, there is no ECW without Todd Gordon. I don't know if people realize that, but ECW came out of the ashes of Eastern Championship Wrestling. So that was the original, you know, Johnny Hotbody, Tony Stetson, Sandman, Ray Odyssey, all the guys, Super D's. That's where Stevie first started wrestling a little bit. Eddie Gilbert was the promoter. That came from when, out of the ashes too, I believe, of Joel Goodhart and Tri-State, that whole thing. And then Eddie Gilbert left and Paul came in, and Todd was the visionary and the money guy behind all of it. Todd was always cool to me. Todd hung around with Fonzie a lot and a bunch of other guys. They did their thing. I'd say after about the first year or two, I mean, I could be wrong on my math, but I'd say probably by 97, 98, I don't know how much Todd was around anymore. Then they had the whole thing with WCW and he left. Remember all that stuff with the mole and all that? I don't know. I never got into any of that. Todd Gordon was always a class act to me. And again, there's no ECW without Todd Gordon. I don't know if he gets mentioned enough. I don't think he does. Like, he gets glanced over sometimes. Like, hold on a minute, guys. I mean, Todd is the one who started this thing. He is.
And Paul Heyman, I heard you say you were a little intimidated of him at first.
I was. He's Paul. Look, when Paulie walks in the room, Paulie, as far as Paulie could walk into a room of 500 people who never met him before in their life. When he walked out of the room, there's going to be 500 different opinions on Paul Heyman, ranging from I want to kill him, ranging to I want to give him every dollar I ever made. That's just what he is. And you know, the first several months I went to ECW, I don't think I ever said anything more to Paul than, hey, how you doing? I mean, even when after the, I think it was about 3 or 4 months in when I wrestled Pablo, my first match there. We were a minute and a half backdrop before the Eliminators were going to come in and beat us up. But I think Paul literally looked at both of us and said, you guys got a minute and a half to go out there, do everything you can, and they're going to come out and kill you. And I came in the back and I said, how that? He goes, you did everything you could, and then they came out and killed you. It was great. And I never really, I don't blame him. Looking back, I didn't have a ton done with me in the beginning. I was part of Raven's flock, then me and Meanie, then me and Chetty. And then when everybody, there was a big thing where there was defections to WCW and the whole thing with Tazz, the belt, Mike Awesome. Like when all that was going down was right towards the end of ECW. When I got in crazy shape, I was probably one of the most over baby faces on the show. I think I was. And then, you know, that's when I think Paul realized more, like, I think I have something with Nova. I think he actually, you know, could make money with me. But early on, you know, and again, at the end of the day, even to this day, people are like, you know, he owes you money. Paul don't owe me no. What are you going to do? I mean, I don't even know what the dollar amount would be when ECW went out of business. Paul is a wrestling promoter. They survive. They're like wrestling roaches. I mean, the wrestling promoters, they are what they are. I can't hate on him for it. He got himself out. He got the WWE. Did he do a lot of people dirty? I guess. But he survived. He moved on. He went to WWE. He's been fired from there. He went back. He went fired from there. He went back. He has his own company. I know he's a dad with kids. I think he's married, the whole thing. I don't know, man. I mean, he helped change the landscape. He did. He gave a lot of guys jobs. Did he make a lot of bad business decisions? Yeah. But I have no ill will towards the guy. If I saw him have a PH, what's up, man? Or boss. I'd always call him boss. Him and Raven, I used to always call boss. Hey, boss, what's up? That's it. And go on my way.
I heard you say one of the two most emotional nights in ECW was his pre-Barely Legal speech.
Yeah, dude, that was hardcore because up until that point, that carrot had been dangled in front of them. See, I'm one of the few guys, I got there about 6 months before Barely Legal. And I was there until the last show. So for almost 5 years, I was there for every single show, every house show, every TV. And more importantly, I was coherent through all of it. I was not in a drunk stupor. I was not a drug addict. I remember almost all of it. I'll never write the tell-all, but I probably could. But considering that Paul Heyman had mortgaged an awful lot for that first show, and again, they were going to do it, then they weren't, and then they couldn't get on pay-per-view, then they were going to. That went back and forth several times. So when that moment happened, you had a locker room full of guys who were either in the major companies and they were trying to go back, or who were in ECW and never wanted to go back, or who were in ECW trying to get their first taste of the major companies. There's a melting pot. It was, I think, God rest his soul, but Kanyon and I had the discussion one time. We said from 1995 until the middle of 2001, like that 6-year period was the single greatest time ever in the history of the business, for the boys especially. There was 3 major companies. You had 3 major companies. You could have 3 guys working in different ones. If I wanted to leave, I could call you to get me in WCW, but I couldn't go there with a non-compete right away. So you'd call maybe Scott D'Amore, who was in ECW, and I could go to Scott, go there because there was no compete, spend 6 months there, find myself, then go to you. We could all go. I mean, there was money being printed. Houses were sold out. The Monday Night Wars. I mean, I have personal friends of mine who were considered mid-card guys who were making near 7 figures during that time. They printed money. It can never be like that again. I wish for the guys, but yeah, the Barely Legal speech was nuts. So they were under high alert, thinking that WCW was going to come and sabotage them that day because they were in, I think, Philadelphia the next night. There was just a sense of accomplishment. Like, they couldn't believe they pulled it off. I would have loved to have been backstage for the All-In show that Cody and the guys just did, because I would imagine it would have been a similar feeling for them to see what they pulled off, and I'm proud of those guys too.
How did the Blue World Order come together?
We did a parody of Kiss one time. Me, Meanie, and Stevie, we were always doing parodies. We did a parody of Kiss. We blew the roof off the place. We came in the back. Bubba Dudley was a huge Kiss mark, and I remember him looking at us saying, man, the only thing you guys could do bigger than that would be the NWO. And I was 100% set against it because of the most powerful faction in the business. And Raven comes over, he's like, oh my God, that'd be great. They would love that. And I'm looking at Stevie and Meanie like, we can't impersonate these guys, man. We don't even know them. And Scotty's like, oh, no. I talked to Hall and Nash and Hogan. Now I look back and knowing that the business the way I do, I would welcome it if I was those guys because it just put more spotlight on them and it got them over. They loved it. And so we said, okay. So we started talking about roles. Stevie was going to be Diesel. Meanie was going to be Razor. Originally, they wanted me to be Virgil. And Scotty was like, he can't be Virgil. He's got to be Hogan. And I remember, I love him, but Stevie was like, well, he can't be Hogan because if he is, they're going to think that he's the leader of the flock. And I'm the leader of the flock. And Raven's like, I don't care. And Stevie's like, yeah, you're right. So we put it together. We divvied up our roles. I spent about a week making all the signs and the picket signs and stuff. And we did it in November to Remember. I want to say it was 96. And we came out picketing. It was supposed to be one night. And I remember we did it the one night. And at the end of that night, we went up to Paul. He couldn't believe it. It was a home run. And he said, I think we're going to run with this a little bit longer. We said, why? He goes, we just sold out of the entire, we sold out 144 t-shirts in one night. Well, gross. And we were like, what? Now, I will admit, we didn't make peanuts off of those shirts. Everybody think there was a time in wrestling when you could not turn on a wrestling show, whether it was Tape Trading or Memphis or any wrestling show around the world, and not see BWO shirts in the audience. They were everywhere. They were like the Bullet Club shirts back then, or the Stone Cold 316 shirts. BWO shirts were everywhere. We were selling out 200-300 of those a weekend. And we didn't make a killing on those. The company did. We didn't. I wish we did, but...
You even saw some in Canada before ECW came to Canada.
Yep. They were the Cult Underground shirt. Like, if you had that, you were in. Like, now it's the Bullet Club shirt. Before that, I don't even know what the last one before that was. I mean, it was the Austin 316 shirt, the NWO shirt, but the BWO shirt, man, that was a huge, like, having that shirt, people were like, dude, this is awesome. And we ran with that for like a year and a half, 2 years. To this day, like, we did WrestleMania 2 years ago in Orlando. we had legitimately, this is from my mouth, this is the promoter of WrestleCon. He said, you guys had literally one of the longest lines all day. We don't get together a whole lot. We all pretty much look like we did back then. We're not drug addicts. We're successes outside of wrestling. The people enjoy that. I think this year we'll do WrestleCon again. It'll be up in New York. WrestleMania is going to be in New York. So I'm actually trying to line up with Stevie and Meanie. We'll try. I think I have 1 or 2 promoters who have reached out to us and try to do BWO that weekend. And if they do, if we do BWO that weekend, I would go. I would be very comfortable with saying that would be my last in-ring performance I've ever done. I only think I did 4 or 5 shows this year. I only do 3 or 4 shows, 4 or 5 shows a year now. Most of them are drives. For a promoter, I go see the guys, hang out, make a couple $100 for the night. But if we can line that up and do BWO one last time WrestleMania week, I'd be more than comfortable to shake the guy's hands in the middle of the ring and say that's it.
Did Hogan ever see it? Did you know
yeah, dude, he did, and it was the scariest moment of my life. It was not until we redid it in WWE, and I kicked myself in the ass for not taking a picture. It was the SummerSlam where the BWO was wrestling against the Mexicools, Great American Bash, and Hogan was wrestling Shawn Michaels on that pay-per-view. I'm all Hogan'd out, have the full gear on, the weight belt, the boas, the beard, all of that, and I leave our locker room, and I'm walking around backstage not really looking for Hogan. Like, I had never crossed paths with him in the outfit. So I go into this one little side room, and the only one in this whole freaking room, and he's in the mirror like fixing his do-rag, was Hogan. I just stop like a deer in headlights, and I look at him, and he just stops and looks in the mirror, like looking at the mirror, looking at me. He goes, "That's a good look, brother." And I just walked up to him. I said, he's like, "Nah, man." He goes, "I used to see it all the time. You guys crushed it, man. You guys did great." He goes, "I love watching Meanie dance." He goes, "You guys did us proud, like putting it over." Man, besides not getting a picture with Trump when Trump did WrestleMania with us, I wish I had just stopped and had the ball. You're living in a bubble in WWE. We can get into that more, but at that time I was so petrified and just walked on eggshells all the time that looking back, man, I would have done anything to get a photographer to take a picture of the 2 of us. That would have been a cool picture to have.
And you said the other emotional night in ECW was when Tazz took the title from Mike Awesome.
That was crazy, dude. We had heard the reports that Mike was going to WCW the week before in Buffalo, and we were all talking about. And again, I loved Mike Awesome. He was a great guy. He was always cool to me. I was really sad when he passed away. That sucked. I wish that didn't happen like that. And he was going to WCW, and apparently he was going to take the belt with him. So we had heard the rumblings that is how they were going to get out of that. That they were going to somehow have a WWF guy come and beat a WCW guy for an ECW title. And it was in Indianapolis. And I remember Jeff getting there, and Jeff Jones, like, he was right in the middle of it. He didn't want to be. He had to be the middleman to communicate everything to Mike on the telephone. And then WCW security went to the hotel with Mike, this whole deal, and they brought him over. He didn't come in the locker room. I wish he probably thought a lot of the boys hated him at that point, and we didn't. ECW checks weren't coming in. You know, the guys were not getting paid. Mike got a great offer from WCW, and he took it. You know, a lot of people forget at the end of the day, this is a business. Like, I work in a different industry now. If that industry's checks started bouncing and I wasn't getting paid from my employer, I owe it to myself to make sure I can go find an employer that will pay me that. Like, this doesn't make any sense when people get mad. And, you know, sometimes the companies always want the boys to be loyal to them and, you know, brother, and that whole thing. But the first chance they get, the company will slit your throat in a second to make a couple bucks. That's how wrestling is. And we didn't begrudge Mike at all, but when that music hit, nobody knew Tazz is coming too. And Mike came in the ring, cut his promo, and did his whole deal. That music hit, and I would put that on par to pops that I've heard at Mania for Undertaker or Shawn, or just it was surreal.
And not to get into the WWE too much right now, but why do you think Tazz didn't really get over too huge in WWE?
Because he was too over in ECW, and he wasn't a WWF created production. If you've noticed, I would say a lot of the times when something caught fire or lightning outside of WWE, every single time it went there, it almost got reimagined and it didn't work. Whether it was Tazz, whether it was the NWO when they tried to do it, the BWO, when they tried to do it with the Four Horsemen, but they called it Evolution. I mean, there's just so many times I've seen Goldberg, the first time they brought that back. I mean, there's so many brought him back. There's so many times, like, something just doesn't. The original WCW, when they did the Invasion, that didn't work. I mean, it just, if they didn't create it there, it just doesn't always work. And I think Tazz was an ECW guy. Now Tazz went in, Tazz made money. He's got a good life now. He does his radio thing, I think, and does his deal. But he got over a little bit, and they probably viewed him as too short. That's always the thing, too. He's too short, which I used to always hate. But, you know, as long as there was the Great Khali or Big Show and Rey Mysterio, you're never going to be the biggest or the smallest. Like, I never understood the height thing. It's always bothered me, but because I'm not a huge guy. I always felt if I was 6'2" or 6'3", I'd have I would have had a multiple world title reign somewhere. But because there were guys that were taller than me that they couldn't have spelled wrestling if I spotted them 7 letters, and they would always get another shot or another opportunity and be saying, huh? But again, it's wrestling. That's the nature of what this is. This isn't fair. It's not supposed to be.
And I heard you used to play pranks on Al Snow in the ECW locker room.
All the time, yeah. Actually, it's funny you say that. I mean, me and Al reconnected at Matt Capitelli's funeral when he passed away. We're doing this 2 days before the OVW 1000 television taping. I was really instrumental in getting that together down on 4th Street Live, which is an entertainment area down here in downtown Louisville. I worked down there. Financial institution, so I was able to put together the meetings and whatnot, so we're able to get OVW wrestling into 4th Street Live. It's going to be an outdoor show Wednesday night. It's going to be awesome. But yeah, back then, man, Al, oh my god, I mean, I sent a dump truck to his house one time of manure. I mean, I sent the Mormons. I mean, I sent before an ECW pay-per-view, I made over 100 yard sale signs with his shoot telephone number on them and put like 50% off, free merchandise. Just put them all over near his house in Lima, Ohio, within a 1 mile radius of his house. And I put like, call it any hour and all that kind of stuff. There was people literally calling his house nonstop. I called the Jerry Springer show and told him that my name was Al Sarvin, that I had to reveal a romantic relationship I had with a woman named Beulah McGillicuddy, who was dating a friend of mine named Tommy Dreamer. The Jerry Springer show called Al's house. I mean, there's just one thing after another. But that was cool about it. We did that stuff. That's how we lightened up the mood. There was there was never any pranks that I did or was ever really directed part of where people's stuff was damaged, or we, you know, vilified them or beat them up or buried them or damaged them somehow. Like, I always thought those ribs were terrible, and I never got involved in any of that.
Did WCW or WWE ever contact you during your ECW run?
After. When ECW was closing up, Ricky Santana contacted me to come down and do a Nitro, and I'm pretty sure I would have got hired. But I called Paul first because this was in that weird spot of WCW was not really fully closed yet, neither was ECW. We didn't know what was going to happen. Actually, ECW closed first and then WCW about 6 months later. So in that weird 6 month window, when they called me, and Johnny Ace had actually called me too, and about going to WCW, and I asked Paul, and Paul said, well, don't worry about a thing, I've got you. If this doesn't work out, if ECW doesn't come back, I'll bring you to WWF. Which I went to WWE. It was not through Paul's doing, it was through my own doing. But I didn't go to WCW, which if I had went down there, I don't necessarily know if I would have been kept when they closed up. When they closed, they had about 20 or 30 guys go down to the HWA training facility, and I could have been one of those guys, but I don't know if I would have.
Were you on the very last ECW show?
Yeah, I teamed with me and Danny Doring. I subbed in for Roadkill for the night because he refused to come because he wasn't getting paid. We defended the ECW tag titles. I won against Julio and I think probably Hamrick. And it's clear as day. I knew all the signs were pointing up to that being it. And as soon as we were in the ring and everybody was celebrating and high-fiving, it was tears of joy. We didn't know when the next pay-per-view was going to, nothing was scheduled, nothing was on the book. I remember looking at Francine and saying, this is it. And she was like, I don't think so, no. But I was like, Queen, this is it. And I just remember, that was like on a Saturday. The next day I was home, I was already booking myself out everywhere. For the next year, I went to Germany, Japan, Mexico, all the stuff you saw in the other room, a lot of that got accumulated. I was getting booked around the world. I was getting between $500 to $1,000 a night, selling gimmicks. I had a really good internet cult. That's when the internet was really exploding too with wrestling, and I had a great internet following. I don't want to say internet darling, but I kind of was. I was like an underground guy, Nova, the innovator, that whole thing. I had a cool buzz. and everybody was booking me. Rick Bassman from UPW, he was a godsend. I love Rick. He brought me out to UPW. That's where I teamed with Frankie. We can get into more of that. Japan, Mexico, Scott D'Amore in Canada. I wrestled for Border City all the time. But I was booked. I made more money that next year on the indies before I went to WWE than I did the 2 years before that combined in ECW. It wasn't even close. Yep.
So what companies did you work for in Japan over there?
FMW, the first time I went. I want to say we did a one Noah show too. There was an FMW and then what was the one? 01. We did a bunch of 01s too. With Carino and CW, went over the Bassman contingent. Me and Frankie teamed up. Yeah, but that's I remember the first time going on. That's Otani was over there, Tanaka. We met all those good Gato, Goemon, Onru. All the Japanese guys were over there. Totally cool deal being over there. And a lot of people get psyched out about it. It's not. First of all, most Japanese wrestling now is not the same as it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's not. I mean, you see New Japan, but for every New Japan wrestler, there's 10, 15, 20 others that would be the same as an equivalent of just some like regular American independent wrestler. And, you know, back then, if they hit you hard or hit you stiff, you hit them back the same way, and that's it. It's just a different style. But they didn't necessarily want you to go over there and do the same stuff they were already doing. They were already guys that can do that. And I think that's where sometimes guys get lost. They go over there and try to wrestle the same way the Japanese people do, but if you have your own niche or something that makes you different here, if you can do that over there, it'll make you more marketable and more memorable.
And you mentioned UPW. What was the deal they had with WWE at that time?
They were a developmental deal, a full-blown developmental deal. UPW was the shit back then. I actually remember sitting home one day about 6 months into my post-ECW life, and Rick Bassman called me out of the blue. And I thought it was ribbed at first, because I remember Rick Bassman. I was like, wait a minute. I'm saying to myself, this is the guy who discovered like Ultimate Warrior and Sting. And I knew his name, and it was a California phone number. So he said, hey, I got a guy out here named Aaron Aguilera. He goes, well, you're featuring him in a tag team with a guy named Justin Sane. He goes, Justin is leaving wrestling. The WWE, WWF at the time, they want to still have Aaron in a tag team. And I asked him if there was anybody in the world I could bring in there to be your tag team partner on it, because they used to run once a month at the Galaxy Theater, and they were major shows in California. He goes, who would you want to bring in? And he goes, he actually told me you. He's a Nova from ECW. And I was like, wow, really? I didn't even know Aaron. So I was like, okay, let's do it, man. So I flew out there, and I used to stay with the Bell brothers out there, with Mark Bell, Chris Bell, Mike Bell, you know, the filmmakers. Mike was a worker too. I love Mike, God rest his soul. But I would go out to UPW.
Are you sick of saying that already?
That sucks, man. They're guys, man. I mean, just a lot. I'm telling you, man. It's. I'm hoping we can get into that more, but I'm hoping that this ends with this generation. But UPW once a month, I went out there and I teamed with Aaron for a little while. It didn't really click, and then I knew Frankie from Kowalski's, so me and Kazarian were kind of with similar builds, hairstyles, all that, and we teamed up. Our team name was Evolution. That was the name of our tag team. We were WWE TV ready, man. We did a couple dark matches from them. Each dark match we did, we'd sit in the back afterwards, and I would look at Frankie and I would literally tell him, we need to clear our calendar because there's no way we're not getting hired. I mean, we had fantastic looks. We could work great in the ring. I never knew why they didn't hire us as a team. It didn't make any sense, but you know, it didn't work. But Frankie to this day is a class act, one of my best friends in the wrestling business. I love the fact that he's still wrestling. Him and Daniels are still going at it. I don't know how, but he's got a great wife, a little boy Rebel. He's doing great for himself. But UPW re-energized my love, because after about 6 months when ECW closed, I was traveling, doing my thing, and I liked it, but I didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. And at about one of the UPW shows, me and Frankie wrestled Edge and Christian, and Jim Ross was there. And he came up to me and he said, no, but just keep doing what you're doing, man. You're on our radar. We're going to get to you. I said, okay. And sure enough, they did.
And John Cena was also in UPW around that time, too.
John is what he is. John was a fan in Poughkeepsie. I believe he knew the Bell Brothers. The Bell Brothers got him over there. John went out there with $1 and a dream. And I remember me and Blue Meanie needed a place to crash one night. And because the show was over at Galaxy, and we stayed at John's apartment. And I remember walking to John's apartment. He had no furniture. John had no couches, chairs. He had nothing. We literally slept on the ground. And I remember asking Cena about it. He was like, I don't have enough money for furniture. and all I do is like take a shower here and stuff. I'm at the gym all day and I'm at wrestling. So he was so tunnel vision and focused. It didn't shock me to see him go through OVW and the success and what he's done now. Now he'll be a movie star and all that. John's a cool dude. John was a smart man. He was a businessman. He had an undeniable work ethic. He knew what he wanted, and he didn't take no for an answer.
And Heidenreich was from UPW too. I don't know if it was the same time as you were there, but we interviewed him last year, and he's not doing too well these days.
That sucks, man. I like John. John's a crazy guy. He is. I was John's unofficial handler when he was in OVW here because of my connection to him. I was friends with him, Nathan Jones, Horseshoe, all the guys in UPW. Everybody in UPW was a jacked up monster when I got there, but I had more tenure than any of them. So the second I walked into UPW, I was instantly the head veteran. Everybody came to me with issues. I got changed when we hung out. They were viewing me as a star from ECW, but I was just the same as any of those guys. Hollywood Yates, Ryan Sakota, all the guys, El Jefe, Aaron Aguilera. Everybody was super cool out there. Rick, Sylvester Turkai. That's where I met Sean O'Hare for the first time. And God rest his soul. Chavo was out there sometime, but we all, you know, John Heidenreich's a great dude. Just a little, I don't know, man. I remember when he had his big meltdown in WWE when he was on the road with Animal, and he had a meltdown and went to the hospital, and like his mom had to come and get him and all this stuff. And you know, I remember going to when John was down here in Louisville. A couple nights after shows, like somehow we wound up in a restaurant over near the Suburban Lodge, like an efficiency motel. And I remember John outside one night, like literally running around in the bushes in his underwear, like trying to feed a cat, like all this crazy shit that only happens in wrestling. But John was a good guy. His heart was in the right place. I just think he had some mental issues. It's unfortunate to see because he was a really good guy. He'd give you the shirt off his back. He wasn't a harmful individual at all. And he was cool. I like John.
And I heard you wrestled AJ Styles in Australia around this time.
Yep. I got booked for a couple different tours. One of the last ones I did was for the World Wrestling All-Stars. Borash put that together with a guy named Andrew McManus. He was a concert promoter. They went over there and did like 5 shows in a row. A young AJ Styles was on that. It's funny because everybody on that tour, and AJ will tell you this himself, everybody on that tour had their own individual rooms, and they had this and that. And then me and AJ, we were like, we were just brought as like the cruiserweight guys to go out there and jump around, do cruiserweight shit. We weren't the big stars that everybody else were. And which is true that we weren't. We were the only ones that had to share a room. And Crowbar was with us too. He would have been in this category. We were like the only two or three guys in the show who didn't drink, smoke, screw at the rats, anything like that. So like day one, we were like, we're cool staying together because we don't do any other stuff. We worked out, trained. We did the show in Australia. We actually did a show in Vegas first for World Wrestling All-Stars. I did a pay-per-view, and I did that. It was at that one where Bob Ryder had approached me and said that there was something going to be coming up in Nashville, Tennessee, that Jeff Jarrett was going to be launching a promotion if I'd be interested in it. And I said, well, full disclosure, you know, Jim Ross had talked to me and Kevin Kelly about maybe going to WWE. I said, I want to roll the dice with that, Bob, and see what I get. He's like, okay, if it doesn't work, man, we'd love to have you on board. So in the Australia one, I went the whole Australia tour, and nobody knew that I'd signed my deal with WWF at that point. Nobody. I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want to lose the tour. I wanted to go. And when I signed with Johnny Ace, I told him, look, I got 2 tours coming up. I got to finish Australia, and then I got to go to Japan. After that, I'm all yours. He said, all right, do what you got to do. So I went to Australia. The day before the pay-per-view was supposed to be me, AJ Styles, and Jerry Lynn, like in a 25-minute 3-way match. The day before the pay-per-view, it comes out in the Ross report that they'd come to terms with Mike Bucci. I'm like, ah, shit. So it comes out, I get to the pay-per-view the next day, and I still joke about this with Bill Behrens. The pay-per-view changes to me versus AJ Styles one-on-one, and Jerry Lynn versus some local guy who was there, and those 2 winners were gonna meet to crown the first ever champion. That was the first time any of this had been discussed. And I'm like, okay, and I knew I knew I was gonna get a push or get rub because I was leaving. So I put together a match with AJ. It's like a 15-minute match. Man, we were in 3 minutes into this thing, and we're already getting... It was the first match on the show. We were in 3 minutes into this, and they're already telling me, take it home, wrap it up, you gotta go. And I knew they just wanted to beat me quick because I was going to go ECW or WWF. And I looked right at the referee, I said, nope. And I went like I did my whole match. I get in the back, I looked at Bill Behrens, I said, you do that? And Bill's like, I had nothing to do with Nova. And again, we still laugh about it to this day, but it's just one of those things to show you, and I don't blame them because I was leaving and going to another promotion. They were going to invest in me. But we still laugh about it. AJ was super super cordial guy. I'm really psyched for AJ because he's a guy who held to his sticks. He didn't break. He went to TNA. He got pushed there. He had a great life. He's got a couple kids. He's married. He's a good dude. And now, I mean, AJ's, I think, 40 years old, or 41, actually. He gets to finish his career in WWE. He can go up there for the next 3 or 4 years, having high-level matches, do what he has to do, continue to build his rep, and when that runs out, he'll leave, go maybe hit the indies for a year or two, or go on the convention circuit, signing circuit. He'll have more than enough money for the rest of his life at that point, but he deserved it. AJ paid his dues. He did what he was supposed to do. He held out, and then WWE finally came to him and made him an offer he couldn't refuse. That's what I like.
And we've used Scorpio a bunch of times in Great North Wrestling, our federation in Canada. I've heard you say you think he's one of the best high flyers of all time.
He is. And total class act too. I love Cold Scorpio. Great guy, great flyer, pound for pound. I mean, I can't think of him and John Cronus, the Eliminators. I don't count Ray because Ray's the best of all time flyer-wise, but as far as pound-for-pound athletic flyers I've ever seen, Scorpio just moved with grace. I never seen anything like it. When I had developmental, they had gotten Scorpio under deal again. I think they were going to bring back Flash Funk or whatever, and I called him several times to come down here to work in OVW with the talents and help them get better. And I made sure he got paid extra for it to hold the... I used to have Aaron Stevens, Damian Sandow. He's my daughter's godfather, actually. He's one of my best friends. He used to live in this house. And when I was in Connecticut, he lived in his house. He was like the landlord of this house. He used to live here with Santino, Shelly Martinez, and whoever the third or fourth rotating member was. Those guys lived in my house because I didn't want to sell it. And Aaron would go pick up Scorpio, and Scorpio would stay down here for the week and train with the guys, and they all got better for it. But Too Cold's a class act. Somebody told me now, I think he works from Florida for Universal Studio or something like that. He has a real life job, which is awesome, but total class act, cool dude, was always a G. He was always on point, just a good, cool dude.
And how did
I'm sure you guys loved having him.
Oh yeah, we actually had a match last year that got 60,000 hits on YouTube, which is pretty good for that stage of his career. That's not a shock
to me because he's legit.
So you were sent to OVW when you had your development contract, or did they ever have you in UPW?
It was UPW contract wasn't a full. They would just do shows. It wasn't really like a training school. It was a showcase place.
Okay.
But I knew Cornette, and Cornette was running this down here. So when I was in Japan finishing up, I literally called him from Roppongi, Japan, and asked him, "Hey, I'm finishing up here. When do you want me to get down there? What do you want to do? The whole deal?" And he laid out the 6 months, or the first 6 months when I was going to be here. He laid it all out to me, and to this day it's the only promoter that's ever done that for me. And I actually knew what I was going to do for the first 6 months here, and it started with beating John Cena the first night for the belt, and then the whole program I worked with him the whole summer, all of it, and it all happened. And I came here mostly because we knew Jimmy. I knew Jimmy through Donnie B, through Dennis Carluzzo, the NWA. Jimmy's the one that advocated for me to come to OVW. When they were tossing around ideas before WrestleMania that year, there was a list of names they wanted to do business with. My name was on that list, and they had a meeting in Canada, somehow the booking committees, and Jimmy said, "I want Nova. I don't care who else you guys send to me," because they were going to send him like O'Hare and the old WCW guys who went to HWA, Luther Reigns, Horseshoe, a bunch of other guys. And Jimmy said, "I don't care who you send me. I need him though." So that's how I got hired.
I see.
Yep.
Were they still doing steroid testing at that time, or was that during the time where they dropped it?
They probably dropped it then, which is again, you know, and again, I mean, I don't want to sound too ridiculous, but I'm actually a steroid advocate. I've never met anybody in my life who took steroids and died from them. People always say they do. You know, they bring up Lyle Alzado, they bring up those people. If you watch Bigger, Stronger, Faster, there's never been any extensive steroid testing of side effects or results or any damage from them, because it's a class 3, I believe, controlled substance, and they can't really have a medical test in that. And I'm from the mindset that as long as cigarettes are legitimate and alcohol is legitimate and a bunch of other stuff, I don't see how you can stop an athlete from taking something to give him an edge to train harder, to train smarter, to train more efficiently. Medicine's advanced, nutrition's advanced, training techniques advanced, all of it's advanced. Tanning has advanced. I mean, LASIK. If you're a golfer and you get LASIK, is that cheating? Is that a competitive edge? If you're taking uppers or speed or downers to get a mental clarity, if you're in a whatever you need. Is that an edge? So I never understood, especially in wrestling, it's a performance enhancing drug. What performance are you enhancing? I never understood that, right? Because it's predetermined.
Yeah.
Did the cast of 300 get to look that way because it took chicken breast and put self-tanner on? No.
Yeah.
They obviously busted their asses. So if we stood in front of Walmart today and gave 100 different kits of whatever somebody had out to them, every single one of those people is going to get a different result.
Yeah.
I just always thought that, guys, you can walk into... You can go to hormone replacement clinics now. You can go to 25 Again or, Total Future Hope and Wellness, and you get testosterone therapy. I mean, what doctor is going to prescribe you something that's going to injure you or hurt you? They don't, right? They prescribe you Tazz. They can prescribe you GH. They can prescribe you stuff that's going to be for your health and wellness. And I just never understood the stigma behind it, or I don't know.
Yeah, I was just asking that because it seems like there was a lot of big jacked up guys.
Yeah, they were. And every single one of those guys that was big and jacked up, you know what they did? They spent 2 hours a day in the gym. They were hauling weight because when people went to go see stars, they expected a certain look. And the guys like to do it. They wanted to train hard. They were busting their asses, man. I mean, these guys were in the gym before practice and after, and they were working out and training and pushing weight. And, is it a different mindset today to a degree? Sure. I mean, could it lead to adverse health effects down the line? I don't know, but I know a hell of a lot more guys dying from painkillers and depression and antidepressants and alcohol abuse. Way more the boys have died from that than ever died from that.
And if you look at Billy Graham, who I've done 3 interviews with, he's still alive in his mid-70s, and he was probably the biggest user of all
the governor of the former governor of California is too, right?
That's
so true. I mean, I don't know, and as far as being rage monsters, I don't know a whole lot of bodybuilders that are on death row for committing homicidal murder. I don't really see news reports where bodybuilders or weightlifters who were taking whatever are storming through the neighborhoods, attacking people and killing them, or flipping out or going nuts and going to a berserker rage. I don't see that. I mean, it's very misunderstood. Bigger, Stronger, Faster is a documentary. Anybody ever wants to learn more about it and figure out how you can wind up on a different side of the fence, but I just never understood it.
And was Batista there when you were in OVW? Absolute
class act. Total pro. He was finishing up. I love Dave Batista. He's a guy that got into the business late. He's a guy that came in, he learned, he was disciplined, he got with Hunter, who I consider the best mind ever in wrestling. He learned from Hunter. He was around the business. He understood it. He wrestled like he looked. If I was a kid during that time, he would have been my favorite guy, hands down. But he was just cool dude, man. I'm so happy for his success in Hollywood. When I see him on the screen, I just crack up. And I'm like, I remember him being at the LAC, spotting me on curls, and he was warming up when I was maxing on. But he was just a good dude. I wish him all the best. I hope I run into Dave again. He's actually somebody I would sit with in a restaurant with nobody else around, just the two of us, shoot the shit. But he did it right, man. He's another post-survivor of WWE world that went on to... And there's a lot of guys that are in WWE now who crapped all over him when he left, and they never thought he was going to make it, and they buried him. He knows it too. So he laughed all the way to the finish line.
And I guess, did Brock Lesnar leave just before you arrived there?
My interactions with Brock were real short. Hey, Brock, how you doing? Hey, man, how you doing? That's it. No long-term stories. I mean, apparently when he was here, he used to drive the ring truck. He had a good work ethic, showed up to practice every day. It's not a shock. I mean, the guy didn't become NCAA heavyweight champion by accident. I think overall, he's the most dominant professional wrestling athlete there's ever been. When you look at his pedigree and what he accomplished, he's the biggest pay-per-view draw, him and Floyd Mayweather, of the last 2 decades. So, Brock's an attraction. It would devalue him if he was wrestling 4, 5, 6 times a month. He's not built for that, number one. It's not believable, number two. And if you put him in the ring with just about anybody except for Braun Strowman, it's not even close, or maybe Roman, it's not even close to being believable that he wouldn't beat that guy in 10 seconds. Yeah. So you have to keep him specialized. He's an attraction. When he comes out, it's like, oh my God, he's here. Like a heavyweight prize fighter.
And they probably couldn't afford to pay for him what he needs.
No, and he's worth every single dime what they pay him. He brings in buy rates, and you're not hiring Brock to go in there and have a you know, 5-star Meltzer match where everybody's like, oh my God, that was incredible. He's an attraction. He puts butts in seats. People forget this is professional wrestling entertainment. It's sports entertainment. If it was real, Brock Lesnar or Kurt Angle would be the champions and no one would ever beat them ever. Or Big Show. That's it.
And you worked with both Chris Kanyon and Lance Cade in OVW. What do you think their downfalls were?
I don't know, 2 different scenarios. Lance got in, I think, I've never seen anybody get into WWE or big-time sports entertainment under the age of 21, 22-ish and ever do anything of substance or not turn out well. I think Lance was probably too young. He was clean as a whistle from what everybody told me when he first got in developmental, and a couple years later he couldn't keep his eyes open. It sucks. Lance, again, I can't believe I gotta say it again, God rest his soul. Lance was a dad when he passed away. He died relatively young. I think he was only 20. He wasn't over 30. I don't think he was over 30. But that sucks, man. He had a cool look. He was a big dude. He was easygoing. He trained hard every day. And just to see him get caught in that web, you know, addiction, man, it's a powerful thing, and then you get sucked into it and you start fighting the mental demons. It depends on what kind of support system you have outside the ring too. You know, when this is all you have and it's not going the way it's supposed to, you're not getting pushed, you're not getting this, you're not getting that, you spend a lot of nights talking to yourself, man. Like, it gets depressing. I definitely suffered from depression multiple times in my career, hands down. And you know, for Kanyon, with Kanyon, I would say his is a true great love story of a guy who loves something so much, but it didn't quite love him back the way that he loved it. That's the best way I can sum up Chris. There was few people I met. We used to talk a lot too. People used to always pit us together because we were both the innovator guys of the late 90s with all our moves and stuff. But we used to talk all the time. People just didn't know it. And then when he was down here, we hung out, we talked, and you know, when he came out, that was a big thing for him. We all knew. Nobody ever cared. But as far as like a mind behind the business, if he was still alive today, if I had a wrestling company, I would absolutely put him as the head agent. Great worker, super good guy, but he loved wrestling so much. And when it started to turn on him towards the end, and it didn't give him maybe the push or the admiration that he wanted from it, and it kind of turned his back on him when he got hurt a bunch of times and couldn't come back to the next level. When they did that horrendous angle with him that time when they brought him out as Boy George, go look that up one time. They brought him out on Raw one time as Boy George, and they had him come out of this box and he was singing to The Undertaker. I'm telling you, man, I'm not making this shit up.
Never saw that.
Devin, I wish I was making it up. Type in, trust me when I tell you, go, people at home, you know you saw this. It was, go type in Chris Kanyon. After this is over, I'm going to watch this with you, and you're going to say, what? This is when I guess they discovered behind the scenes that he was you know, gay, and I guess it was a way of messing with him or what, I don't know. But when you see the segment, you're going to say to yourself, as any rational person would, why in the world would that be on a wrestling show? It had him come out of a box dressed as Boy George. This is after his big injury. You know, other superstars went away and got injured. When they came back, there was music videos and fanfare. I mean, Chris was out for 6 months. He was the Lions MVP, that whole angle with the invasion before that. He comes back and they had him come out of this wooden box with makeup on, singing with his lisp. Do you really want to hurt me by cold? It was insane, man. It just goes to show you sometimes the warped sense of like humor. I to this day I can't figure it out. But
who was on the writing team at that time?
A bunch of them, I guess. I don't know, dude. It was bizarre. I'm sure he was maybe there. I can't blame him entirely, but yeah. There's only 1 or 2 voices at the top who have to okay that. Yeah. But it was mind-boggling, man. But to Chris loved this, and it didn't love him back. And I think ultimately that's what I talked to him about 2 weeks before he committed suicide. And I wish I had done more. Him and Benoit are the 2 I wish I could have figured out some way to get a hold of him beforehand. I don't know, man.
Was Orlando Jordan open about it with the boys? Or?
Orlando was I like Orlando. A lot of people didn't. They thought he sucked. Which if I had to grade people whether or not I like them because they were good at wrestling, that's an insanely ridiculous way to judge your friendships. Whether or not you can be friendly or cool with somebody, whether or not they're good at throwing people into ropes and they bounce off of them in a skilled manner. I liked Orlando. I thought he was good at what he did. Orlando didn't politic. He didn't put himself over backstage. Orlando definitely had his own proclivities that he did. He brought people around with him. Sometimes it definitely raised some eyebrows, and they were like, well, that's odd. But no one cared. No one cared. Everybody joked about it openly, and no one cared at all. Orlando was one of the guys. He was a good dude, looked like $1 million bucks, when he first came down here, he was friends with Rocky Johnson. Rocky would train us every now and then. And Orlando could have been on a higher pedestal because of Rocky. He wasn't. He didn't put himself there. He didn't big league anybody. He was smooth. I think Orlando got when he got to SmackDown, he got too much too fast. If he had been brought along a little bit slower and got into the ring with some guys and got a chance to go a little bit more, pull some more time on house shows. But Orlando was more than capable in the ring. I thought he had a cool look. He was a good dude to be around. I had no issues with Orlando.
And I believe he did have the Ultimate Warrior's final match.
Yeah, he did.
Which is something...
Not how I would have constructed it. That was an odd match. And you go back and look at that one, you're like, this is odd. But, or they put it together, and it drew money, and Orlando did it. Orlando actually lives down in Australia now. I just saw... Okay. Who's up here? Oh, there was a kid named Ali, who just came in from Michael Hayes' wedding at OVW. That Michael Hayes. Not the WWE one. But he came up here and asked him if Orlando was down in Australia. He said he was. He does like a promotion down there. He lives down there. But Orlando was cool. He was another one of the SmackDown guys and kind of did his thing.
Were you down here when the Boogeyman and the Jim Cornette incident happened?
Yeah. Here, I love Boogie. Marty Wright is one of the more fascinating, interesting people I've ever met, just in life. Not in wrestling, in life. He got into wrestling later. He was a great character. If Marty Wright had been able... I think he got in a little bit too late. If he had been as old as he was and maybe as banged up a little bit, if he had been able to get his skill set just to be a little bit more than novice, he probably could have been this generation's Ultimate Warrior. He really could have been. He had $1 million look. His promos were cool. I was married to Boogie for several months on SmackDown. I mean, from Vince McMahon himself, he's like, get what you can out of Boogie. Let's see if we can bring him along. But Boogie was a cool dude, class act. Just another case of, I guess, back then, Jimmy being so passionate about OVW and flipping out and just about every little detail. I honestly, I don't know how Jim Cornette survived physically during those last 2 years of his OVW tenure, because I really thought every single week he was going to have a heart attack or an aneurysm or die right there on the spot, because he was so wound up and he would go so insane about the smallest little detail, because he's booking the territory and he was running this like, and I guess that's what all great bookers do. He was running this like it was 1985 New York territory. I mean, he was not... I just wish he had taken a step back sometimes and realized this is Louisville, Kentucky, it's wrestling, and more importantly, the people that were here, this was a step family for them. This is not their full-time family. Like, to me, when you're in the developmental system, even now, that's your step family. Like, your real family that's going to adopt you later on, they're in the big-time league. Like, the WWE, SmackDown, Raw, those are the family that are going to adopt you full-time to go live with them. This is just where you are for the time being. Like, you shouldn't have been booking this like, I mean, like it was the Von Erichs versus the Freebirds. Like, it was every little dollar hinged on whether or not, I mean, he took it really passionate. I wish a lot of the other guys took it to a degree as passionately as he did. But man, on a weekly basis, he'd have a meltdown and I'd have to leave afterwards and be like, Jim's either going to get fired or someone's going to kill him.
And what did you think about Sylvan Grenier? Was he in this?
I love Sly. I'll tell you what, this is 100% shoot, Devin. Take pro wrestling out of it. Take pro, it has nothing to do with pro wrestling. Out of 46 years of living on this earth, Sylvan Grenier is one of the easiest going, happiest, go-lucky, charismatic, cool dudes I've ever met in my entire life. And I've been to 50 countries in every state in this country. Sylvan Grenier is a class act. He used to ride with me and Rob. Sly knew he wasn't good in the ring. He was trying to get better. He really did try. He had charisma. He had $1 million look. He was my travel partner. When I was on Raw, I was like the dad of the group. I used to book the cars and hotels, and I used to be very... These guys will tell you, and they're laughing about when they see this right now, but Gene Snitsky was in my group too, Chris Masters. I basically would almost have to hand them an itinerary. What time to be at the airport, what time we were getting in the car, what time we had to work out, what time we had to tan, what time we had 30 minutes to eat, on a very strict schedule for those guys on the weekends. That's how I put it together. But Sylvan, every story he ever told us, from being a model in Milan to being a tennis instructor to this to that, it was all true. All of it. And people thought they hated on Sly because Pat found him and he got him his break, and there was all the innuendo about that. But Sly was a class act, dude. His money was always there to pitch in. He never alligator armed. He was a cool dude, super easy to get along with. Really strong guy in the ring too, physically strong. What he lacked on technique, he picked up on strength. But he had heat. When he walked out and he was smiling with that French flag, the whole deal, man, people hated him. What does he do now? Is he still up and doing his own thing?
He wrestles for us on occasion, and I'm not sure what his real job is now. But
it's being Sly. His real job, whatever he makes money in, I guarantee you it involves, you know I'm right, it involves him being himself somehow, and he probably is doing right now, like I have one job, is working in a bank as a manager of a bank location. Sly makes his living, I guarantee this, by doing like 7 different things, and it all involves him being Sylvan Grenier somehow. And it's successful, whatever he does.
And what about Rene Dupree? He also works for us from time to time. I think he falls under that category a little too much.
100%. I had no issues with Rene. Rene bagged me a couple years back on one of his shoot interviews he did for no reason at all. I was actually good to Rene when he was here. If he sees this, he knows I was. I was cool to Rene here. I let Rene travel with me. A lot of the guys hated Rene down here because he would never, he was arrogant. He had a sense of entitlement. He talked down to people. He didn't treat them that well. He just did it. He was very unkempt too. He was very disorderly and very like threw trash everywhere. Just wasn't an organized guy. He was a young kid. He was 19, 20 years old, who came up through the business through his dad. He was around him his whole life, and he came down here and had the world handed to him, ready to go. And he looked good. He was a good worker in the ring. I had many, many matches against Rene. And I was very disappointed in him several years back when he buried me for no reason when I had the developmental job, that I did this and did a bunch of stuff that didn't happen. I actually saved Rene's life, I'd like to think, because there was a match that he had in OVW when they took him off TV and put him down, and I'm watching the tape one day, and Rene was so out of his mind, being pilled up and drugged up, that he actually was blowing spots left and right in the ring. We called him on the spot, me and Johnny Ace, and Johnny was going to fire him. I begged Johnny not to fire him. Let's put him in rehab. Let's help him out. Rene did go to rehab. I checked on Rene every single couple weeks. Every 2 or 3 weeks, I checked in on him, see how he did. He got his life back on track. I think he still wrestles to this day, Rene. I wish that he's older and wiser now. He has to be. But again, back then, probably too much, too fast. The pills, the drinking, the lifestyle caught up to him. And I don't know, if I ever see Rene again one day, I'd like to sit on the other side of a table for him and just look at him and say, really? Because he buried me for no reason. I didn't deserve that. I was good to Rene.
Well, he probably will see this, and just for the record, he's in excellent shape right now, and I believe he has conquered his evenings.
I hope he has. Rene Gugan, if you see this, if you reach out to me, if we sit across the table, because you know I was good to you, man. I said some shit on Rene too. Maybe I shouldn't have to, but if he's healthy, and I think he's married now. Someone told me he's married.
To a Japanese woman,
and that's good. If Rene's married and he's not going to pass away, and he's doing his family name proud, and you know he's a good worker in the ring. If he truly has his life back on track, that's all I ever would have wanted for the guy. You know, wrestling heat is nonsense. Throw it aside. In the real world, if Rene Gugan is a married, I don't know if he has any kids.
No.
But if he's a married husband and his life is clean,
owns an apartment complex.
Good. He was a smart guy. He used to tell me. Rene told me one time, he's like, you're the smartest guy I've ever met, Nova, because you know I remember buying a lottery ticket one time, and I don't know if he remembers this. I bought a lottery ticket, and he saw me with the lottery ticket, and he goes, "You're the smartest guy I've ever met in this. One of the smartest guys I've ever met, and you buy lottery tickets?" Like, it just struck him odd that I was buying lottery tickets because he thought it was a waste of money. He was very frugal, which I liked. He didn't waste his money, but I thought it was too much too soon. Some wacky stories with Rene back then, but I liked the guy. He was in my travel crew for a while too, but he might be one that one day him and I have to sit across and just figure something out, shake hands about it, and I wish him the best. I do.
Or hash it out in the ring.
I have no desire to wrestle, man.
And how did you end up becoming Booker of OVW?
I wasn't really the Booker. It was at the tail end of before they were really figure out what they were going to do with Simon Dean. Before all that, and we can get into how I became Simon Dean. But I was just helping. I wasn't getting anything out of going to OVW every day and just bouncing around the ring and taking bumps and killing myself. So they needed to teach me to do more. So I was learning how to write TV and how to edit it, and I was running house shows because Jimmy didn't want to go to them sometimes, and I would I'd book the shows and do all of that, and that's basically how it happened.
And the Simon Dean character you just mentioned, how did that come together?
I was down here. They would bring me up every 6 months or so, and I would do a house show loop, and they just had no ideas for me. And then one day, Johnny Ace, I was at TV, and he pulled me in an office and said, look, in about 15 minutes, Vince is going to come in here, and he's going to ask you for a pitch to bring you up to the main roster. That's exactly how it happened. I'm like, oh my God, and I always had this idea in the back of my head. So Vince comes in, and he says, look, you've been with us for about 1.5 years now. Your stuff is good in the ring. You're rock solid. He goes, but I can't make any money with Mike Bucci. And I said, no, I agree 100%. I don't want to be me. I never understood that in wrestling. Like, I'm a big character guy. So I looked at him, I said, I have an idea. And I started telling him about the Tony Little thing and the mix between Tony Little and Jack LaLanne and a fitness guy. I knew that Vince was a fitness guy. I knew that he had Ico Pro years before. I knew he had all, so I knew he would catch his attention. So he's listening. I said, you know, we can do this, and I can have a workout system and this whole deal. The name I thought it was Sunny Slade. I wanted to be Sunny Slade because I was going to have Sunny Slade's super system of self-help and supplements. Yeah. And so I pitched it to him, and I said, you know, we can do these, we can do vignettes, this whole deal. He said, he goes, we can do these vignettes, and I see this, and I see that, and he's really getting into it. And I said, no, 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 I don't want to do vignettes. I want to do infomercials. And he looks at me and pounds the desk. He goes, God damn it, that's incredible. So about a week later, all the writers, they had Cincinnati and Raw. So the next day, all the writers are going to come down for a visit. So he comes down, the first and only time Vince McMahon has ever been in OVW. He comes down. We wrestled several matches that day apiece. And at the end of the day, Johnny Ace looks at me and goes, hey, you got all that fitness shit? Because Johnny was a big advocate of it. I love Johnny Ace. And I go, yeah. He goes, go put it on. Let's go do one match. Let's Vince see it. So I didn't tell anybody what I was going to do. I had Aaron Aguilera, who was down here, and he was the only one who knew what I was about to do. He went in the ring, all the talents sitting around, Danny and Jimmy, like, what's going on here? Aaron goes in the ring, starts cutting a promo. I played, I think, Olivia Newton-John's physical or something. I come out with a gym bag, and I had a watch, and I'm doing this whole thing, and they're like, what? So I go in the ring, and I'm doing all these antics and stretching and push-ups and chokes, and I can see Vince looking at like, this is awesome. I did a promo as it too, and afterwards, and he came right up to me after the match, and he goes, well, I suggest you start getting a new locker room leader down here because you're going to be on the road in about 2 weeks. Johnny came over and said, you'll probably be doing the infomercials on this in about a week. Well, 5 days later, big John Gabor contacted me and said, hey, we're flying into Connecticut this week to do your infomercials. I said, well, that's how it happened, like that. They flew me up there the night before I'm in the hotel, and Big he calls me or sends me a text or something. He's like, what do you need for this tomorrow? I said, well, what do you mean, what do I need? He's like, yeah, how do you want to do this? Like, that's exactly how it happened. I gave him a whole list of what I wanted, the fitness girl, a weight bench, the backdrop, the fried chicken for the all of it. And it was all there the next day. We shot footage for like 3 hours. And then we put together the infomercials. And that's how it happened.
So you wrote it yourself?
All of it. Wow. Literally doing this as we were directing. I'm like, you know what, guys? I think I could actually do that, but let's do another take. And we did it for 3 hours. 100%. Like, I always envisioned back then a magical closet or a box of gimmicks that they would say, you'd be perfect in this. But that's not how it works. I truly believe, like I tell guys all the time, and I still talk to a lot of talent. I would do seminars or whatever it may be, and I would tell guys all the time, look, don't wait for them to come up with something. Like, I don't care what your idea is, come up with something to pitch so you can get yourself an angle and promote yourself. Nobody knows you better than you. Like, you always had like a weird, evil type personality. You were like, you know, the Hannibal, the Lecter, like all that kind of stuff. You would never made it as a smiley, happy, baby-faced guy who was high-fiving people and huggy type. That's not you, but your image, that you knew how to portray that. I couldn't have pulled off what you did. So when you have an idea of how you can wrestle like you look and what your true niche is, and a lot of guys don't understand that, I think you'll do a lot better.
And is it true that the Dean part of the name actually had something to do with Dean Malenko?
It's his real name. His real name is Dean Simon. Okay. So I was going to be Sunny Slade, and I'm sitting at a house show one day, and Dean Malenko comes up. He goes, hey, guess what your new name is? And I go, what? He goes, Simon Dean. And it took me like about 10 seconds. I go, what? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I don't know. And I actually looked at him and I go, I love it. Because I would have loved to have done Simon, but I kept thinking in my head about Simon Diamond from ECW. I didn't want anybody to think it was Lance who was doing the gimmick because, you know, it's a retread of a name. Yeah. I love the whole Simon Says and all that. It fit naturally. I don't know which person looked at it and said, hey, be Simon Dean, but I absolutely loved it.
Did you ever happen to see the infomercial with Lanny Poffo on Tony Little?
Yeah, 100%. I loved it. That's what my mix of the Simon Dean character came from. Tony Little, Jack LaLanne, And another one, what I bought a lot from, was from Ben Stiller, not from Dodgeball, but from a movie called Heavyweights.
Yeah.
There's a movie called Heavyweights where he was Tony Perkins, and he had the Perkins system, and he had the handlebar mustache, and he was training all these fat kids at the summer camp. But Jack LaLanne, Tony Little, and Tony Perkins are the three that I kind of got it from.
Yep. You started on the Raw roster, I guess, which was the main show.
Main show. I was a sponsor on the show, and that's how they brought me in, and I was there for several months, unbeaten, and then we got back. I'll never forget it. We got back from the pay-per-view in Puerto Rico, and I had a 15-minute match with Shelton Benjamin for the Intercontinental Championship, and the first match went over. It got cut down to a 5-minute match, and they beat me on that, and then I don't think I ever won again.
Was there any reason given for that?
Yeah, I never fit in the grand plan. Yeah. That's the thing. You are who you are the day you walk in there. If they have a grand plan, you're free. If not, they'll sit back and they'll just wait for the smallest little thing and say, see, it didn't work. You don't believe me? Go look at Adam Rose. Go look at No Way Jose. Go look at this one. Look at that one. They do it to all these guys. They come in and right away, if you're not somebody's guy or this or that, I don't know, man. It's the nature of the beast, though. I said it from day one. This is not fair. It is what it is. I made great money up there for almost 3 years. I had a good time too, and I didn't need to win. I could go out there every single week with any talent, whether it was a main eventer or an enhancement guy. I always had great matches with them. My matches were always super solid. All the guys liked working with me. I had no complaints, no issues. My stuff was believable. It was solid. I was a good character on the show. Like, I had heat. I could always get my heat back on the microphone. I knew how to work. I was a guy who went out there. I knew what the match was supposed to be. Go out there and get your opponent over and have a good match. And I don't think there's enough of that today. I think a lot of guys, we'll get into that, but I just think a lot of that heel character art is lost. I don't even know who's really villainous anymore.
And you had a match on pay-per-view against Bobby Lashley. Any memories of that one?
Yeah, Bobby was a guy who became a great guy. I love Bobby Lashley. He started down OVW, worked really hard, All-American. We trained with Bobby. We helped train him. I went up there and had Bobby on the house shows for several weeks. They were getting ready to debut some new talent on SmackDown. I went to Vince and said, this guy is ready. And he said, I know he is, because I asked the agents how your guys' matches have been. He said, they're great. And he goes, and that's largely because of you. I said, I know that. And Bobby knew it too. But I said, Bobby will listen out there. He looks like $1 million. We have a star in our hands. And he goes, can you do it tonight on SmackDown? I said, absolutely. We went out there. We did it on SmackDown. I actually broke my hand that night, later in the night, on the angle. And then we came back 2 weeks later. I did the pay-per-view match with him. Couldn't have been better. Before that match, I remember telling Bobby, look, he had just had a little girl too, and he wanted to get back to Colorado because the wife was back there, or the girlfriend at the time, I think. Forgive me if I'm wrong. Raising the daughter on her own because he was having to be at OVW in between TV to learn. And I remember going to him and saying, look, let me go out there and do my thing. If we crush this tonight, I'll go to them and I'll say, look, Bobby's going to learn more on the road. Let him move back to Colorado. And that was after his debut, and we did that. I went to Johnny. I said, Johnny, he don't need to be in OVW anymore. We're going to book him on the road, let him learn there, let him move back home. And that night they looked at Bobby and said, you can move back to Colorado. Yep. I love Bobby. I'm glad to see him. I don't know what they're doing with him now. I think they gave him some new legs by putting Leo Rush with him. That adds a whole nother dimension to that character. But Bobby Lashley was a class act. Total pro athlete. Great dude. Good dad. Just an absolute... He was always a pleasure to be in the ring with.
And for the One Night Stand pay-per-view, you actually appeared as Nova. Were you surprised that...
No, because Stevie had called me, Dave Lagana had called me about 2 weeks before that and said, hey, we're bringing back the BWO for a night at One Night Stand. And I thought I could get a little nostalgia run, but I was very emphatic. I said, I don't want to stop being Simon Dean. He said, no, you'll be both. And I could be wrong about this, and then you can check the research, or fans, you guys can chime in on this. I think I'm the only wrestler in the history of wrestling who literally played two different characters on the same federation, on the same show, but they were not supposed to be the same guy playing them. You had the three faces of Foley. Everybody knew it was Mick Foley. Yeah. But in this case, when I was out there as Simon Dean, I was a totally different person in that outfit than I was being Hollywood Nova. They were two different people. They were treated, because I remember Tazz one time telling me in the production meeting he was going to make an allusion during my Simon Dean match, like, hey, that guy looks familiar. And Vince said, no, they're two different people. And Tazz said, I looked at Vince, I said, brother, I've known this kid since he was 19 years old. Like, how can I do that? And Vince said, nope, two different characters. So I think I'm the only guy that ever played two characters. I could be wrong.
Yeah. I don't recall.
Stevie too, but yeah. Stevie was this big Stevie Cool, or he was Stevie Richards. It's not that much of a stretch. I was Simon Dean villain, Hollywood Nova babyface.
Yeah.
So I don't know if, I mean, somebody can look that up and prove me wrong, but I think I am.
And it seems like the fans even didn't really harass
Dude, a lot of them didn't know. I swear to God they didn't know. And we went out there, did it for a little while. I knew it wasn't going to last. I mean, I don't want to get into it why I think they brought the BWO back. There's been different speculations on why they did. I mean, I have my own reasons, but I'll probably...
A lot of people suspect, obviously, it was a favor because of the Bradshaw.
That could be.
What was your reaction to that, speaking of the one night stand?
I couldn't believe it, man. I couldn't believe it happened. I think John was drinking. There had been some issues with him and Meanie in the past, and they're standing in the ring.
Why were they allowing the talent to drink?
Because it was Wild West, man. It was I don't know. They were all up on the balcony drinking all night long. It was an absolute recipe for disaster. And I mean, Meanie's the most harmless guy in the world. I don't know what the backstory fully was, but he was attacked on pay-per-view and just bludgeoned. You watch, as soon as that begins, you just watch. Go watch the pay-per-view. Go watch it again. I grabbed Rey Mysterio by the throat and pulled Rey into the corner with me, and I looked right at him and said, don't move. Let's just stay right here. And it was just a bad sight. I mean, Meanie got busted open and bludgeoned, and it sucked. John did a lot of shit that was messed up, and more of it was just to entertain himself or to keep the sanctity of the business, because he broke in totally different than a lot of the guys. He broke in with Bobby Duncombe and around Stan and all the other guys. He was an old school, hard-nosed guy. I just felt bad all around for that. It just marred. It ended the evening on, for me, it ended on a low note. An evening that was supposed to be really cool. The other memory I have from that evening was Balls Mahoney and Axel. What should I say right now? God rest their souls. But Balls coming up to me with the chair, because he was going to get to hit me with a chair and I was going to take a chair shot. And he looked at me and he said, Nova, you know, when I hit you with the chair, man, you know, don't put your hands up. You know, the people are going to be into it, the whole deal. And I'm looking right at him. I said, you're out of your mind, John. I said, I'm 100% putting my hands up because you're a maniac. And he got in an argument with me and I'm yelling at him, telling him I'm not doing that because the next day I was going to have to go be back to Simon. This is a one-night thing for me. And I remember Jericho walking by and Jericho looks right in his face and goes, Nova, if you let him hit you with that chair and don't put your hands up, you're a fucking idiot. And I said, no, Chris, I'm totally putting my hands up. Like, it was an argument to John about that.
Yeah.
But that was the old ECW mentality. In ECW, if you put your hands up on a chair shot, you were vilified, man. Like, you had to walk. That was like a badge of honor. Thank God it's not like that anymore.
And what I never understood about that is in a real fight, you would put
your hands up. Now, the way they instruct the guys now, when you're in the corner and I'm giving you some punches in the corner, they want the guys to cower up a little bit and you have to break guard. So if I'm going like this, you punch on this side, then you're over here, then you open up. But back then, you were literally expected to turn around, just go like that and beat your head and get a chair coming at you. I'm a mathematician. And I sat one home one time and I did some vector math on the propulsion of a chair shot, and I remember timing out the swing, and I think I got it to anywhere between like 48 miles to 57 miles an hour that those chairs would hit you. Are you kidding me? Like, thank God that that's not the way it is anymore. I'm so glad that the guys get protected from concussions now.
I wrestled at Biss once and I remember he hit me with a heavy chair and my hands went numb after, so it's like, you have to be an idiot to take it.
It's not. So when I would see Masato Tanaka and Mike and those guys wrapping those chairs around their heads and whatnot, even when in training today, when the guys train today, they get to train in a padded ring. Like when you're first starting, you get to train in a padded ring with like a helmet on. Like I've had 12 concussions that I know of, 100% that were diagnosed. I don't know how many undiagnosed. So if we can avoid that in the future, I mean, look what's going on in the NFL, right? That's a high collision sport. Wrestling, you take a lot more bumps than you do in football. How many guys in football really take bumps on their head? Not a lot. Most of the linemen, when they get tangled up with defensive linemen, often they lay on the ground. Yeah. I mean, there's still some head smacks and whatnot like that, but in wrestling, you have the potential to get a concussion every single bump.
Now, just also on JBL, like it's known that both him and Bob Holly were a little bit bullies, but was it ever told to them by the office, do you think, if someone was kind of out of line, that they had to actually... Probably
to a degree, and you used to have locker room policemen like that. Yeah, when you're in the WWE world in that bubble and you're just mind controlled there, you're more of a dark, depressed soul. You just are. That's how it was. You're always on edge, and I actually think the office liked that a little bit. Yeah. Keep the guys on edge, keep each other's throat, keep that competitive advantage. I truly do think that. And you know, John and Bob, I think maybe just to rile themselves up. I don't know what the deal was. Maybe it was so they could entertain Taker. I have no clue. But a lot of it happened Nobody got killed. It sucked. When you're in it, it was awful. I mean, luckily for the guys today, they're never going to have to experience any of that. Yeah. I still talk to a lot of people up there. When I hear the stories of what it's like now, I'm like, you have no clue. But
didn't one guy actually quit the company?
Palmer Cannon. Yeah. He actually, I remember giving him some heads up before the tour, and I'll never forget, I woke up in the middle of the night to a text message. He said, "Hey Nova, it's Palmer. I'm on my way back. They got me." And I was like, what? I don't know all the particulars of the story, but it got really hot and heavy. This is after he had, I mean, that kid gave up a lot. He moved down from Georgia. He was in the developmental system. During his time there, right before his full-time tenure on the road, his brother had passed away in a really bad motorcycle wreck. He had a lot of ups and downs, Palmer, mentally, behind the scenes, like cracking him. And then he was up there and they just pushed him to the edge. I know some of what was said and I won't repeat it. It was too horrendous for words. And what I do remember is the stories of Rey Mysterio running out to stop him from leaving. Because Rey was like, please don't leave, man, you're one of us. Rey did the right thing. Rey ran out there. And Rey is just, if this is the list of the best guys ever, Rey's up here, in and out of the ring. But Oscar, he ran out there to try to stop him from leaving. He was so like heartbroken about it. Ray was so upset, like he didn't want to see it. But at that point, I don't think I've ever spoke to Palmer again after that. I don't even know what he does today. But he was a good dude, and that sucked, man. There was a lot of guys that came through the pipe in that early to mid 2000s to late 2000s. There's like a 10-year span that I can think of, like 4 or 5 guys that are maybe up there still, kind of, but everybody else just was in and out.
Yeah. Speaking of that, you were managing the Gemini for a while, and they were pretty much in and out.
Yeah, they were my guys too. They were in. I knew the Shane twins forever. They were on the Independents for a long time. They got hired. Johnny liked them. They were big dudes. They fit apart. I know Michael and Todd forever. I kept trying to get guys up there. I wanted to do a stable. I wanted to have the Dean family. I wanted to have a wife and call it Gene Dean, and I wanted to have my henchmen. I wanted to have a whole cult. And I shit you not, I actually wanted to have a group, and I was going to start the Church of Simonology. I was going to be like a Scientologist. I was going to turn the Simon Dean character into like a mind control guy, and I was going to be like a Scientologist and get in people's heads and have them doing what I wanted to do and all this whole thing. And I remember pitching it, and they said, "Oh, it's too heavy, man. We can't do religion. We can't do this and that." I said, "Yeah, but it's my religion, my way of life, like the fitness lifestyle and all that." And you know, it's sidebarring, but they didn't do it. But lo and behold, like less than a year later, I remember when they were doing the pay-per-views with Shawn Michaels was tagging with God, and they had McMahonism and all that, and I was like, huh, that's odd. A year ago, I was told I couldn't do that. But the Gemini were down in Deep South. I found them, brought them up to the main roster, and I went right to the writers and said, I need henchmen. So I created the name the Gemini too. Me and Ed Koski came up with it.
And why was that so short-lived?
One of them got hurt. Todd tore his tricep right off the bone. He tore his pec right when they were getting over. I think they would have had a tag team title run. They were older guys. They had some miles on the tire, so it was just an unfortunate accident. He blew out his pec, and I went right to them and I said, look, he's tore his pec. He needs about 2.5 months to get back to where he was. Maybe 3 if we can get him back in shape. For those 3 months, let me team with the other Gemini. We'll put him on the floor at the ring. If we have to do a switch every now and then, they're twins, maybe somebody won't know, but at least he can be on the outside to why we can keep this rolling. We did it on one house show and it worked really good, and then they were completely taken off TV, and that was pretty much it. It was the second they get an inch for somebody else to come in and say, "Poof, get rid of them. I was right about them. Get rid of them." That's what they do. And that's the nature of what this is.
So I guess it was around that time that you started transitioning into the office.
Yeah, I guess. I knew. I never had long-term plans of being like a WWE lifer. I know that's crazy to people when they say that, but I always envisioned my life winding up exactly the way it has now. You know, I'm 46. I've been in the wrestling business for almost 26 years. Haven't been active in it really for 10, just on and off, so I don't even want to count that. But I've been out of wrestling and not full-time in it for way longer than I was in it. So people forget that. Like, there's so much more to life than just being in a national showcase. It just, I don't know. But I was sharp. I had a college resume, college recruit, college background, degrees. Johnny Ace liked me a lot. I liked Vince. Everybody liked me. They were relaunching ECW, and Tommy Dreamer, who never wanted to be in the office, was leaving. He said, "Hey, you want to run developmental?" They sat me in the office one day. They said, "You want to do it?" I said, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's see what we can do." Right then and there, the second I did that, that was my last match was against Bob Holly in a dart match. I walked out of the ring. I didn't have a ceremony. I didn't do anything. I didn't really tell anybody. I knew that was going to be the last match I ever wrestled for them. I never looked back, never blinked. I didn't sit back, woe was me. I looked at a new challenge. 2 weeks later, I jumped in head first and said, because there was no developmental system at that point. There was OVW and Deep South, which was barely surviving because that was a train wreck. And that was it.
What was the main differences between you and Tommy Dreamer, the way it was?
Tommy never wanted to do it. Tommy's heart was in the ring. I went in there, I mean, foolish me, gung-ho, trying to do my job. That was the longest year of my life. It was the worst year of my life, dude. It was terrible. I was, you know, newly married, a couple years, moving up here. You just really realize how quick, just how absolutely insecure and paranoid so many professional wrestlers are. I mean, guys that I knew for years, all of a sudden, just flipped a switch. They hated me because I was an office guy. I couldn't get them a job. I couldn't get them a raise. Or when people had to get fired, like all of a sudden, magically, I could fire people. I never fired anybody. I hired a lot of guys. I hired Kofi Kingston, Santino Marella, Drew McIntyre, Sheamus, a lot, Serena I helped. I mean, a lot of the people I can help that I get hired, Rick Lon Stevens, a bunch of dudes. Yeah, TJ, Nat, helped all those guys out. They were all great, don't get me wrong, but there were so many people that were just so, like, it's just selfish and paranoid. I don't really blame them because they're in the system, but man, it just, it reinforced what I had always suspected, and that's why I live with a clean conscience now, that there's so many people I don't talk to. I'm cool with a lot of guys, but I'm friends with very few. And that's by design. I don't ever want to hear the words ever again. You have heat with this guy or that guy or that. I could care less, Devin. Yeah. I could absolutely care less. I left that all behind 10 years ago. My life is great how it is. Except the Cowboys aren't winning as much as I like them to do. But other than that, man, back then at that time, I went in full of piss and vinegar. I tacked it the best I could. Mistakes were made all around. And it's just one of those things where I guess I don't even know what the system resembles today. I have no clue. It's closer to what I always envisioned it to be. I never saw it. When I go down to Florida again next year, I'll probably hit up Scotty or Carino and go see it. I only saw it for about 2 seconds one day, but I want to go on more of a tour and check it out and see what it became.
And what was the whole issues with Deep South Wrestling? It seemed like it was a big disaster. It was.
I don't think it was in McDonough, Georgia. They tried it. It just didn't work. Jody Hamilton was always cool to me. I don't know, man. I don't know if they were trying to run it like an old school Carney type thing, and just not be on the up and up with everything. I just remember like, shows not being booked or guys complaining. They had all the issues with Bill DeMott. There's no way on earth. The way that's the same guy who's training people, and there's no way Bill could be around it today. It's so PC and correct. You can't even blink the wrong way. Trust me, I know what goes on in training down there. It's not the same. And so Bill would have never survived it long term.
We actually recorded a Bill DeMott seminar a few months ago, and
it was probably interesting.
It was interesting, yeah. But he was talking about some of the differences, that there's a live feed now, where back then, I think it was the trainers making their own tapes.
And they couldn't do it. Like Bill, I'm not as much of a hard ass at training as Bill was. I couldn't survive as a trainer today. Somebody would give a lackluster effort, they'd be an athlete. Something would happen that would set me off and I'd quit. But no. I wasn't. When they shut Deep South down, I hired, you know, all the guys are down there. I knew they were going to shut it down.
How did that news come to you?
Well, it went under, we have been talking about it for a couple weeks. And Johnny Ace had actually come back from Italy from a TV. I had flown down, he had told me the day before, hey, we're going to shut it down tomorrow. Don't tell anybody. So I went down the day before. I got this big box truck, this whole deal. I hid it in this parking lot. Johnny flew in. We had lunch, me, him, and Ty Bailey beforehand. We're sitting in this Italian restaurant, like we're sitting there eating the pasta, the Italian restaurant, the whole, and I'm sitting there like this is a mafia hit almost. That's what it felt like. The three of us in this restaurant, we're about to go put the kibosh on Deep South. Dr. Tom knew. He was the only one I told. And George Murdoch. I hired George too. He knew too.
Tyrus.
Yeah, he knew too. I love George. So we go down there and we call everybody for the big conference. We go into the building. We go into the back first. John pulls around, has Jody in the back. And Bill wasn't there. He had been fired at that point. And Johnny tells Bill, I'm sorry, Jody. Hey, Jody, this didn't work, blah, blah, blah. I'm going out there talking to my talent. We're shutting you down, the whole deal. And Jody's like, this is bullshit, John. And John's the only time I ever saw John get really mad because John put his neck on the line for Jody for this to run, and it didn't work. So it made John look bad. That was his first. And John wanted to change everything that Jim Ross had down here because he wanted to make it his own vision. He did. He told me. And I agreed with him, make it his own vision. So, not the JRs didn't work, but he wanted something different. So we went out there and Jody started yelling. They were talking about lawyers and this and that. And the part I felt the worst about it was Jody Hamilton looks at John and goes, well, you got all that shit out there, John. How are you going to get out of here? And Johnny looks at me and goes, go get the truck, Mike. And I just looked at Jody, and Jody goes, did you know about this? I go, well, I kind of had to. And Jody's like, damn, Mike. And I was like, well, Jody, what are you going to do? And we went back. Johnny went out there, talked to the talent. Now, the talent was over Deep South. They did not want to be there anymore because the second that Johnny Ace said we were shutting it down, they're going to relocate it to Florida. Mike will get with you guys. He'll get you your expense money to move down there. We're going to put some of you guys in OVW. We're going to have a whole new system down there in Florida. These guys couldn't have loaded that trick quick enough. They were throwing shit in the back of this truck. I think to this day, Kofi Kingston still has about 20 pay-per-view chairs that he got, that they were throwing out, and he got them all. I want some of those chairs, Kofi. But it was a good night, I mean, for a rebirth, but it was a sad night, because my last image that I saw of Jody Hamilton was him in his school with a couple tarps and a couple tubs of supplies, and just loading in the back of his car. And I felt bad, because Jody was I like Jody. He's a vet, man. You gotta give him respect. His son, Nick, Nick Patrick, he was upset about it too, but it sucked. I just wished I could have worked out differently, but the writing was on the wall way before I got there. Deep South was broken way before I got there. So, the Deep South was the beginnings of a young Kenny Omega too. Kenny was there for about 2 months, I guess, and then he just said, this is bullshit, I don't want to do these stupid drills, and he quit. I think he did okay for himself. He might have a shot. I don't know if he'll make it, but...
And what exactly were your duties as the head of developmental?
Babysitter, psychiatrist, money psychiatrist, complaint listener, hand holder, fire putter outer. That's it. For every person like a Cody Rhodes or a Katarina Higgins, Katie Lee, who would call me and want an honest critique or to help them come up with something, I had 10 others who constantly bitched, cried, complained, threw other people under the bus, trainers, this, that. They all wanted to pitch 20 different ideas for themselves to be in main events. It was just one nonsense thing after another. The majority, I liked a lot of them, but the majority of the talents were delusional, and they weren't willing to work hard. And there was a lot of people who just cried constantly, and it pissed me off. They were disrespectful at times, and I just felt like this isn't. It changed quick. Like 2 or 3 months into that, I'm like, I made a mistake, big time. My money got cut. WB completely, and I don't know who got the screws crossed on this one, but I was making half of what I was making as a talent. I was told I could do the seminars, I could do all this and all. I couldn't do any of those, even though Dreamer did them. The script completely flipped and changed. Every day I had to read another report about how somebody hated me. I had heat with this guy or that guy, and there was a bunch of other guys behind the scenes in WWE who envisioned that job like, oh my God, they thought you'd been made at that point. Like, you're a made guy, you're in the office, and it was a complete opposite. Like, you had to start all over again. I got treated like a piece of shit. And Johnny was good to me. Johnny Ace was good. Vince was always cool to me. Steph was cool, but just the underlyingness of it, I wasn't really ready to be an executive then. Now, but it just sucked, man. I had so many people constantly bitch and complain. It was just nuts, Devin. My phone would ring at 1 o'clock and this guy got arrested. This guy needed to be bailed out. This guy didn't show up at practice. This guy wanted to do this. And I would rather run a preschool with 30 kids and be responsible from that than ever be in charge of that again. I don't know how the trainers do it now. It's a completely different vibe, I guess, but I would lose my mind. I'd kill somebody.
I think there's more trainers now too.
I'm glad. I know there's Carino, John Moss, and Brookside, and Norman, and Scotty, and all these other. That's great, man. Sarah Del Rey. There's a think tank. I hope so, because back then there was one guy pretty much running it all. I lost sleep. Yeah. I mean, I was depressed. It was just. I was miserable to be around. I was always on edge, constantly worried about something.
Did you have to review tapes too?
And then the tapes that would come in from the people that were trying to get jobs at WWE, they were so bad at times I was in the 4th floor of Stanford Tower. There were times that it was so bad watching these tapes that I looked out the window and thought to myself, if I throw myself out this window right now, I don't know if I'll die, but I'll probably be really injured, so I don't have to watch these tapes anymore. That's how bad it was. That's how absolutely mind-numbing it was to see what they thought would pass for good stuff. The people that would send them in. Yeah. And I was like, man, what am I doing here? I didn't feel like I'm making a difference at all.
What about like extras? Were you also in charge of those?
That was cool. That was the only thing I liked doing. I had an extra list, and I had extras all over the country, and I had the bookers of those extras, whether it was Bassman or Demore, Bill Barons, POD, who booked all the little people, or Short Sleeve Slamson, who helped me. Like these, I would reach out to these guys and they would find me extras, and I get them booked for the day. I got them $150, let them go to the show. Maybe try to get hired, you know, who knows. But I would say within probably less than 2 months of doing that job, I couldn't wait to get out. And I was already asking to leave. Within 2 months, I was like, look, I'm not going back and being a talent. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm getting a mortgage license, I'm getting into finance. I don't want to do this anymore. 2 months in, I was already asking to leave. That's why I kept my house here, because I knew it wasn't gonna work.
And I haven't heard the full story of this, but there's like a clip of it online of you saying a kind of funny story that I guess Bruce Pritchard was trying to pitch Roadkill to fight.
Yeah, Undertaker. Apparently they were on the jet coming back, and Bruce had just seen Roadkill, and he was telling Vince, I just saw this guy, he's amazing. Oh my God, I found the guy to take on the Undertaker at WrestleMania, like just flipping out about it. And I guess when they finally saw Roadkill, Vince was like, what? I mean, Roadkill's a big guy, but certainly not Taker's league. And they were like, what? And they just completely shit all over the idea, and just they buried Bruce, and that was another Bruce Pritchard crazy thing, I guess.
So what was the highlight of your time as talent relations?
Leaving.
Oh, really?
Yeah, hiring people. Hiring people was you are making a dream. For someone who's dreamed about this their whole life, Devin, when you hire them, you're making their dream. When you have to be the one to let them go, it's the worst feeling ever. Angel Williams, that happened to. And I love Angel. I've seen her many times since then. Angel Williams got moved from Deep South Wrestling, got put in OVW. She had not even moved into OVW. They were bringing her to TV several different times the last couple weeks of Deep South. They were going to have her be a homecoming queen. They were going to have a Matt Hardy stalker. There were several different ideas for her. They kept killing it every single time. Her family had helped her move down here when they closed down Deep South. She had just literally finished putting the furniture in her apartment in OVW, and I was told on a Friday afternoon when they were firing people that I had to call Angel and fire her. I was there for Angel's first day ever in the business in Windsor for Scott. I'd known her for almost 10 years at that point. And I just did a table like, what? You guys are trying to bring her on TV. You're going to fire her now? And John said, yep. No, I was on a Wednesday. So Wednesday goes by, Thursday goes by, everybody's getting fired left and right, and it's like Friday morning, and I'm like, I can't do this, I can't fire Angel. So that day, John's like, you fire her today, or I'm gonna fire her myself. So I actually was driving in a car with my wife. I was still married at the time. She knew Angel too, and I called Angel, and I said, hey Angel, I got bad news, you know, you're not going to TV this week. And she's like, oh, okay, no, but that's okay. You know, I'm fully moved in here. My mom and dad just left yesterday, this whole deal. And I'm like, holy shit. And I said, well, I got some other bad news. And she's like, what's up? And I said, they're releasing you from your contract. And I've known her for so long, and I'm a ribber, and I like to enjoy. She's like, oh, no, you're fucking. I said, I'm not. And she could hear it in my voice. And I heard her start hyperventilating on the phone. And I'm like, Angel, I started crying on the telephone. I said, I'm not lying. And she's like, oh my God, Nova, what am I gonna do? And I was devastated. And and when I had to fire Inferno Kid. Inferno Kid was he moved down here from Jersey. He was part of the group with me, Aaron Stevens. We had a great group down here. I got called up, the group disbanded. They never did anything with Danny down here. After that, he got hurt, and they released him from his developmental contract. I called him from Penn Station subs with Idol sitting right next to me. And Inferno was like, you gotta be kidding me, man. You know, when you fire somebody like that, you just wonder if their life's ever gonna be on track, which the new talent now, I'm actually kind of glad that there's a lot of people, Devin, getting into wrestling now who aren't lifelong wrestling fans, because here's why. The people that are getting now, if they give this a shot, if it works, if they make some money, awesome. But if they don't, then they will have enough chutzpah and enough in them to go tackle something else the same way they tackled this. And and it should lead to less depression, less maybe suicide, drug dependence. I don't think when you get hooked on pills and alcohol and all the other stuff, a lot of it isn't from the injuries. It's not. It's because you can't live in the real world, and your senses, like, you have to numb them or dull them so you can go back to, you know, you're not a star anymore, you're not in a routine, you're not in a machine, you're not part of the big show anymore. Like, that's what people get addicted to, and even if they're not making money, they're just addicted to it. And when they leave this, if they're not as passionate and they're not in love with it, they should be able to get out of this and go do something different.
Yeah.
And I'm psyched for that, man. While you're in this now, I tell the guys all the time, listen to your podcasts, play your video games, do what you guys want to do. I don't want to see another generation. I'm 46. This generation of guys that came in with me in the early to mid 90s, like, these guys I don't want to see 5 or 10 years from now, like, this generation of guys all ODing and pills and drugs. I don't think we will. I think this is going to die out with this generation. I hope so. I've had, my God, what have I said, God rest his soul, in this interview, 20 times?
Yeah.
And they're all personal friends of mine. I don't want to see that again.
I don't know if you ever knew this guy. I think he was around your time.
I'll say yes. Sean Osborne? Bad Seed?
Brian Damanovich. He recently killed himself too.
I saw that too, man. Yeah, I know exactly who he was. It just, I just don't, I've never, you know, you'll never have love for anything as much as you have for your own child.
Right.
You know, I was married for 10 years. I don't know if I've ever said this publicly. I loved my wife, but I don't know if I was ever in love with her. And that's crazy to say that, because I'm realizing that now. She's a great mom. She's a great wife for somebody else. Your life never turns out like you think it's going to. But I don't know. I mean, I loved wrestling, but never enough where I was depressed at times because I felt like I was giving my effort and my all and I wasn't getting rewarded for it, which in the real world is usually completely different. If you work really hard in the real world, you actually get noticed for it, and you get benefits, and you get raises, and you get, you know, my company treats me great because I attack this with the same work ethic I attack wrestling with. But I don't know, man. I hope, if there's anything else you take away from this, any young guys who are watching this in FCW or in NXT, or any guys out there and you see this, when your run ends, and it'll either run because you end it or it'll run because somebody else ends it, it's okay, man. Find my number, find us who don't do this full time anymore, reach out to us. There's life after this. Don't be depressed. I mean, you went up and down too, Devin. I know you did. You've been depressed before, up and down. You know, you put a lot of time and energy into this. Look what you've accomplished. So, I just think that there's so much pressure and stress that guys put on themselves today. And there's only one major wrestling company. There's 32 teams in the NFL. They dress 53 people. It's a little over 1,500 people playing the NFL. We know how hard it is to make it to that level. The WWE, between the main roster and NXT, probably has 100 full-time spots. Out of those 100, 20 or 30 of them are showcased on a regular basis. Yeah. Look at what I just compared it to. How hard it is to get to the NFL. It's even harder to get to that one. So it's just, I don't know, man. Guys, just, I'm hoping that this is the end of that. This next generation, it dies out with them.
And this is kind of a weird story that I heard you tell. Some fans of this channel might find it shocking because we interview a lot of the old guys, but I just have to ask you about this story.
I'm an old guy, 46.
No, it's not about you.
I know, yeah.
It's about Dr. Death Steve Williams when he came in for the seminar.
With the book? Story. Absolutely, it's 100% shoot. Again, I did this a little bit differently. I realized that I realized quick, or I should have realized quick, I wasn't dealing with a whole bunch of people who had the same passion for this as I did. So when Doc would come down, I had Doc come down and help guest train. Robert Gibson helped come down and train. Doc had a book that came out. Foolish me, I thought it was, I guess, I know this is a crazy notion, but to have the talents learn, what can they learn from guys who came before them, or girls, that they can maybe take themselves and help them get over? Learn the history of the business. I got this from Dr. Tom when I had developmental. When you first came in the business, in the developmental territory, I gave you a list of 100 names who were influential in the business. Everybody from like Lou Thez all the way to Ricky Dozan and everybody in between. I ain't toot my own horn. I am a walking encyclopedia about pro wrestling. If you're on the internet and you're watching this and you know this, ask Darla Staggs or some other people who've been around me. They'll tell you, I know my shit. And I wanted to see the talent learn that stuff too. So when Dr. Duff came down, he had a book that he did. I had him bring copies of the book for everybody. And I just challenged him. I said, look, you know, I know you guys spend all day like doing what else? I don't even know what you people do down here. But read Dr. Duff's book. I'm going to give you a quiz on it tomorrow. and we're going to see how serious you take this. If it had been me, if the head of developmental came in and said, look man, today I want you to go put this rubber chicken suit on, I want you to run up and down that hill 10 times, and then I want you to make a lemon custard pie afterwards, I'd have done it without blinking an eye. Of course, these people didn't actually take that to heart, and I think maybe 3 of them read the book and actually took the thing seriously. And again, it just kept compiling into me just staring at my watch saying, I gotta get it. I'm gonna kill somebody if I stay here.
And I heard you say that Dr. Death was actually a little sad.
He was so mad, dude. He was so upset. His feelings were so hurt. I don't know how many times, I was out after about 2 months after that, and I don't know how many times he came after he passed. I never saw him again after, and I wish I did, because he really was upset by that. It was like people took his life's work and just shit on it and threw it out. And it was the mentality at the time. The guys didn't care, most of them.
And you talked about this a little bit off camera, but what's your thoughts on the whole Chris Benoit situation?
Horrible. I don't know how to this day, Devin, I don't know how people look at me with a straight face and have actually asked me, when is Benoit going to the Hall of Fame? I don't understand that. Probably after my cat Lily, when she goes in the Hall of Fame. Chris was a cool dude. He was the hardest worker I've ever been in the ring with. My favorite matches of all time. But much like I would probably react to Jeffrey Dahmer being in the ring with me, I have to now put Chris in a category that's untouchable. He's gulagged from WWE history forever. I can't see him ever getting back in. Until Daniel and Nancy come back, then I guess after that maybe he can come in. But it was a horrible tragedy. It sucked to happen. When it happened, it knocked us all on our asses. It was that's the single worst thing I saw happen to pro wrestling in the last, I don't know, since maybe ever. I don't know if anything was so shocking. It put a horrible stigma on pro wrestling. I mean, I still answer to this day, oh, you guys all do that, concussions, you do this, you do that, and he murdered his family because of wrestling, or just one thing after another. It was for a guy that was probably the top worker of his generation, who absolutely wanted to leave the business better than he found it. I think he did the exact opposite, and it sucks. I actually hate mentioning his name. I've never watched, since the day he did all that, I've never watched a single one of my matches ever against Benoit. I have a bunch of them on ZD. You can't watch them on the network, I don't think. But, and I never will again. I probably wrestled him 20 or 30 times. I loved wrestling Chris. I felt like I was in a fight for my life. And I felt like I earned my money those nights. And I can't use him as teaching tools or watch him, or they're as if they never happened.
Okay, so a fan wanted to know what exactly was in the shaker that Stone Cold drank before.
Protein. It was this protein milk. The single best segment I ever did in my wrestling career. He was the easiest guy to deal with. He was a big fan of mine. I got to WrestleMania. It was the day after WrestleMania in LA. I got to the building. Maven came over and said, dude, we're doing something with Steve Austin tonight. And I said, what? I couldn't believe it. I called all my friends and family, and everybody said, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing something with Stone Cold. The segment was so good. Pat Patterson came up to me afterwards and he said, that should have been on WrestleMania last night. And I said, yeah, Pat, it would have made me about $20,000 more. I should have been on there. He couldn't have been cooler.
What was he like backstage?
Awesome. He came up to us and he literally, before we do the rehearsals in the afternoon, I'm sitting in the middle of the ring with like a piece of paper and I don't know what the hell we're going to rehearse. He comes walking in the ring, looks both of us, has his piece of paper, looks at the writer, he rips it in half and goes, Simon, you do your thing, Maven, you do whatever it is you do, and I'll just do my thing. We'll just play off each other and go from there. And he walked around, I looked at Maven and said, this is either going to be awesome or it's going to be the shits. I'm scared to death right now. Live TV for, I think it was 11-minute segment.
Did something happen between you and Roddy Piper to land you in the doghouse?
That's what I've heard that story before. They tried to give me a hard time one time overseas. I cleared the air with Roddy before he left. Apparently before he died. Again, God rest his soul. But my crime at the time, believe it or not, we were in Italy, and this is 100% shoot. My crime was Roddy walked up to me in the hallway because we were going to do a segment that night out there. Roddy was there. He didn't want to be there. Johnny told me beforehand Roddy didn't want to be there. They brought him in. It was after Eddie died. They brought him in for the tour. Roddy didn't know anybody on the show. He didn't really want to be there. And Roddy told me that too. And I'm sitting backstage. I said, what do you want to do, Mr. Piper? And he literally told me, you follow my lead, kid, and we'll just go back and forth. I said, okay, great. Well, I won't say, you can imagine who heard it. Somebody heard that and they blew it out of proportion that I basically came out and dared compare myself that I'd be able to go one-on-one with Roddy Piper. That was my crime. That I was going to go in the ring on a microphone and ad-lib with Roddy Piper. Let that sink in for a minute. So, yeah, they gave me a hard time about that one night. The next day after I pulled, because Benoit was involved in it, a couple other guys, and of course the next day, I'm so sorry, no, but it's not a big deal, don't worry about it. But again, it just continued to push that element in my head, like, this is the most fucked up, crazy bunch of people I've ever met in my life, that I'm literally gonna catch flack because I said I was gonna go out there and do my job and do the best I could at it, and I was good at it. So I was cool with Roddy after it, I guess. I talked to him like a year when he had his, I remember I sent him a Christmas card when he had cancer that year, and as far as I know, I was cool with him. You know, it sucks he passed away. He was a great heel, but that's another one of those, I guess, blown out of proportion stories, but it's something I don't miss. It's that whole world of crazy wrestling heat bullshit, and anybody who thinks otherwise, who was there at that time, look, man, go load your socks with rocks and go sink to the bottom of a river. I don't give a shit.
Could they have done more with that Sean O'Hare, Roddy Piper thing?
100%. I love Sean. Do I have to say it again? God, you're killing me, Devin. God rest his soul, man. I love Sean O'Hare. Legit ninja, great guy, super dude, class act. I spoke to Sean about 2 months before he passed away, and I wish that he had found peace. He was a hairdresser down in South Carolina. He was a good guy. Sean had the coolest look of him, and Batista had the two coolest looks of any workers I'd ever seen.
Thoughts on Muhammad Hassan?
I like Muhammad. He was too much too soon. Muhammad was a green kid. You know, he's 100% Italian. His last name is Capani. He was not Iranian. He fit the mold of what they wanted. And they brought him up there. They gave him the big push. They were going to put the rocket on his ass. Work-wise, he wasn't ready for that yet. And it would have taken him a while. That goes again where guys are around for a long time before they get into those spots. He fit the part. They put him up there. A lot of guys, he didn't do himself any favors. He made a lot of dumb mistakes. But a lot of the guys really got on him for no reason that I saw. He made some dumb mistakes, but it was, I think a lot of the guys are more jealous than anything else that he was going to get the big push, and they just couldn't take it.
Did you design the Simon Dean costume, or was that
100%. The color scheme was mine. The face on the back was mine. The Segway scooter was mine. I was at a casino here in Louisville, Kentucky, and I saw security guys on Segways one night. And my ex-wife said, look at that, they're too lazy to walk. And I looked at her, I said, oh my God, I gotta get one of those to go to the ring on. I showed it to Stephanie. She said, this is great. I don't even know what it is, but I'm sure Vince will love it. Go ahead and get it. And I bought the Segway. All of it was mine.
Someone says you really rocked the mic in WWE. Do you think they gave that character a fair shake?
No, because I wasn't necessarily, I was a guy who was in OVW, I was a tread, I was around for 10 years. I got up there, they gave me a shot. I was never maybe so-and-so's guy, so I didn't get pushed to the moon. It is what it is. I was a character. There's two types of guys, Devin. Guys who build the company around, or guys that can help build the company. I was a guy who they could put out there. My matches were bulletproof. I had heat. I was good at what I did. I could have had a much bigger run. I used to ask them all the time, give me some wins every now and then, so when you have me get beat by somebody, it means more. Oh, yeah. They pay me well. I had no complaints. My dad owned his own garage door company, and he worked it until he died. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and then worked part-time at Stop and Shop as a pharmacy tech. I'm a middle-class, blue-collar family, and I made it to stand in the ring at WrestleMania for the WWE. I had a better career than I ever could have imagined.
Would you have liked to have seen a BWO versus NWO versus DX War Games match?
No, because I would have been taking the fall on that somehow. I would have loved to have done something with the NWO on a show, but it just the nostalgia acts are over, man. Again, why do you think they're digging up Undertaker and Kane versus Shawn and Hunter? It just sucks because a lot of the newer guys aren't getting over, but people know what they like. Ultimately, Devin, you can't tell the fans what they're supposed to like, and the people love the BWO.
How did you interact with Pillman in ECW?
Very little. I was there the night that he went in the ring and he did a promo in the ring, and then he came back at stage, and I might have been New Jack or somebody. I think there was some crazy incident that happened there. I just remember him getting a little fight with somebody. That was my only interaction with him. I recently met his son on some independent shows. Great kid.
Could Kid Cash have done better in WWE? Anybody
could have if they wanted him to. Kid Cash, I love Davey. I'm the one that gave him his Kid Rock hat. I brought him as my tag team partner when Chetty went down. I had Cash be my partner. We teamed up. Davey, man, if you see this, I love you, brother. He's a legitimate tough guy, too. Davey's done MMA. He's fought. He's a tough kid, man. I love Jamie. I love Davey. He's a good worker, good kid. Was always cool with Davey.
Do you still talk to Maven?
I haven't talked to him for years, and I wish I could. I wish I could track him down, man. I know he went through some ups and downs. He had some problems with some pills or something like that. He got arrested. One of the boys told me that he's a bouncer in Long Island. About 2 years ago, a mutual friend named Raleigh, I think, put him on the phone. Man, I talked to him for about 5 minutes, but I like Maven. He deserved better, too.
Someone asked if you have asthma problems.
I do. I have allergy-induced asthma, and that's why you'll see me catch my breath a lot when I talk fast. I don't always take stuff for it like I should, but you'll see me wheeze, and I'm just too, I don't say stubborn to take the medicine all the time, but I should. But
what current talents in WWE would you like to see them do more with?
Finn, I think Braun is a home run. Bray, obviously Drew. I'm partial to Drew. Cesaro, I hired him too. The younger guys who want it, Joe, AJ, the guys who are doing a great job now, who earn their stripes and they work hard, those are the guys I want to see.
Thoughts on Damien Sandow's release?
It sucked. He was. I think that he got over and he wasn't supposed to. He was getting over. He outshined Miz at that point. This stunt double thing was awesome. It caught into a life of its own. He caught lightning in a bottle. He wasn't supposed to. They didn't know how to promote that. He wrestled Miz one-on-one on Raw one time for the rights to the Miz name. And I remember when Miz beat him, I called him that night and I said, I think you just wrestled your last match there. And then they brought him out like after a week or two after that. It didn't work. Aaron's doing great. He's in California. He's been doing some pilots, some acting. He doesn't really wrestle anymore. But he started, he was 16 years old. Aaron, and he was so big, he was good, he was great on the mic, he made his own character. Like, WWE should be begging for that. Like, guys who create their own buzz and get over, like when Zack Ryder did it too, like guys that go out there and organically get something over and the people love it and they're starving for it and you got to give it to them like they did. They can do it. They did it with Daniel Bryan with the Yes Movement thing and all that. The WWE was forced to change the WrestleMania main event because of that. Sandow should have still been there.
Thoughts on working for Shakira?
We had a good time there. I was misinformed about that. For years, I thought it was just a bunch of goofs wearing cosplay outfits and killing each other and doing a bunch of goofy shit that didn't make any sense. Quackenbush, I was totally wrong. Those guys worked really, really hard. They were a great group to be around. Mike's got a good thing there. The guys are all respectful and cool. When we went there and did the Trios tournament, he had told us, and we had the Bullet Club there that night too, he told us that we were the most requested act in the history of King of Trios, was the BWO. That was cool to do that. I like Mike.
Are you still close with Meanie and Richard?
Yeah, we're actually, I just talked to me. I found Meanie, that's how I got you here, through Meanie. Meanie contacted me. I just talked to Stevie 2 days ago. We'll get together, we'll do something, I'm sure WrestleMania week at WrestleCon. It'll give me something to train for, something to get ready. But again, if we can put something together promoter-wise up there, maybe a Dreamer runs or something like that, I wouldn't mind doing one last show at the BWO and then calling it a day.
Is it true you used to be a manager at Wendy's?
Sure was. My first full-time job was pushing shopping carts at a store, for a grocery store. My last day there, they asked me to clean up some dead birds near the dumpster. I said nope. I walked down the street. I had 20 bucks in my pocket. I went to Wendy's, had lunch. There was an application on the tray and I signed it and was hired on the spot. And I would work at Wendy's all week long, and on Friday afternoon I'd pack up my car and head out to do my independent shows.
Does your twin brother have anything to do with the business anymore?
No, and he will gladly tell you that. Donnie B would be the first one to tell you. He basically would say, I don't want to curse, but F wrestling. He promoted it when it was over. He was done with it. He still follows it. A lot of our old friends from Sharps were in chat groups together and whatnot. The original Brick Clique, as we call ourselves. But Donnie happily left the business many, many years ago. He's got 2 houses. He's a cop. He's going to have a pension in a couple years. Him and my little brother took over my dad's door business when he passed away. So he's good, man.
How did you find out about Eddie Guerrero's passing?
Tomco. We were in a hotel in Minneapolis, I believe it was, and Travis came down there crying his eyes out. And I said, what the hell happened? He told us Eddie passed away. Eddie was a class act, man. He always treated me cool. I had great... my match that convinced... When I was done with ECW, Eddie was on the indies. Eddie Guerrero was wrestling for Donnie B on Phoenix Championship Wrestling. I wrestled him one-on-one in my hometown of Toms River, New Jersey. Eddie had been getting jobbed out on the indies. Believe it or not, there was a bunch of promoters who had been bringing Eddie in and beating him on their shows just so they could have their guy pin Eddie. Eddie wrestled me in my hometown. I refused to beat Eddie Guerrero. He wanted to put me over in my own hometown. I said, absolutely not. I can't. I'm not pinning you. And I was worried in this match that Eddie was somehow going to pull himself on top of me and like make me pin him in this match. But when that match was over, it was the first time in my wrestling career that I actually thought I could be a WWE superstar because I hung with him.
Thoughts on CM Punk and his MMA career?
He didn't have an MMA career. I mean, that's just reality. I like Philip, as I call him. I have no issue with Philip. I think Philip was smart. What I was glad to see him do, he walked away on his terms. He got to tell the company, go to hell. I made my money. I'm out of here. He got them before he got. You know, there's thousands of guys who got released from WWE and they never got like a last chance. Punk said, nope, I'm out. And he took his ball and went home. I think he's married now. He does his own thing. I hope he never fights in MMA again. Punk was a protected guy on the shows. I don't think he had a legitimate background really in anything. He was a good character and he was a protected wrestler. But MMA is a completely different ballgame. And I give him credit for trying it. There's a lot of guys who talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. And he went out there and he got his ass handed to him twice. But he's also fighting against guys that are a lot younger, been doing it a lot longer. And it's a totally different genre. Ask me right now if I had aspirations to go play in the NBA, if I can go on the court and go play with LeBron James or something. I mean, it's just comparable. It was insulting to think that he could just walk in there and do it, but I give him credit for trying.
Thoughts on deathmatch promotions like CZW, IWA?
I think deathmatch wrestling sucks. It's not my cup of tea. I know there's an audience for it. I know there's fans that like it. I've never been a big fan of it. I like DJ Hyde. I love Ian Rotten. I've never done it. I don't see the skill in bashing baseball bats and glass over people's heads. I know each is to own. It's a required skill. I know there's guys that do it. If that's your thing, go ahead, man. It was never for me. I think there's too much risk for too big. There's not enough reward. The risk is too great and outweighs the reward. Let's put it that way.
And a lot of those companies don't even test their wrestlers.
It's horrible, man. Yeah, you know, it's you're not making any money and you're risking permanent injury.
Best thing about working for the indies, and what do you think about the resurgence of the indies?
Is the freedom of the guys have, they express their creativity, they're not walking on eggshells all the time. I think it's great. The more places the boys can work, the better it is. I will tell you this is unlike a time I've ever seen before in wrestling. I think within the next 6 months to a year, there will be a major company that is created from a group of guys, or maybe 10, 12, 15 guys that get together. They get with a money guy, they get with a TV guy, and there's another major wrestling promotion that'll come up within next year. Will it be successful? I don't know. But I'm telling you, within 6 to 9 months, sometime of next year, maybe after WrestleMania, whatever, you're going to see a wrestling promotion with, it's going to have some juice behind it. That's what I think.
Was there any heat between ECW and XPW guys back in the day?
Not the guys, but when Rob Black, and I'll just tell you this because I don't want to run long on time. When Rob Black and those guys came and they invaded the ECW pay-per-view in LA, XPW was literally beat to death in the middle of the street. The whole thing carried outside. That's a tale for another day, but they got beat down and it was a crazy scene, man. I ain't saying who did what because I don't want nobody to get in trouble, but it was nuts.
Do you prefer 20 by 20 or 18 by 18 rings?
Actually, 20 by 20s. It's more room. It gives you more. Wrestling's all about timing. And there is a difference between 18 by 18 and 20 by 20. There just is. It's an extra 40 square feet to move around in. And I believe 40 square feet. But, no, 2 by 2. Yeah, I think roughly. But it's just a different ball game.
What was your favorite BWO tribute?
I don't really have a particular. Every single time we ever put that stuff on and went out there, it was a plus because we never knew it was going to end, and we had the last laugh. Like the fact that was actually included on the WWE's Greatest Factions Ever DVD. The BWO is on that DVD. They're mentioned in the same breath of the Four Horsemen and DX. Let that sink in. That's nuts.
Thoughts on Trent Acid's passing?
That sucks. I had butted heads with Trent and Johnny in the past because they turned heel on Donnie B years ago. They made up before his passing, but it was again, I mean, you have to do the God rest his soul, but Trent was a young guy who was talented. He deserved a lot more if he had been able to give it to himself, but the demons got him and he was just never able to beat it.
What was Shane McMahon like?
Cool dude. Shane just wanted to be one of the guys. I'm actually psyched that Shane's successful outside of WWE, because the company's not going to be his. When it's all said and done, it's going to be Stephanie and Hunter. So, I mean, the fact that Shane was able to create like an empire on his own was cool, but Shane just wanted to be one of the guys.
Hardest change from wrestling all over the world to being a family man?
It's the easiest change I ever made. I couldn't wait. The last several years in WWE, I couldn't wait to get out of the rat race, man. I just didn't want to do it anymore. I hated it. I hated going to work. I was miserable. I guess the biggest change is just not living the life of an outlaw anymore. You know, not living in a suitcase or getting 5 a.m. flights or just being in a normal schedule, which I love. I'm a very routine, schedule-oriented person, and most people aren't.
Who has the worst breath in the wrestling business?
I don't know. That's a weird question.
Yes,
Kenny Bolin. Yeah.
Have you ever met John Zandig? And
yeah, I did.
So what was it like?
I had no heat with Zandig. I remember, honestly, Devin, you know when I met him? When he used to show, this is the God's honest truth, he used to wrestle on the Independents in New Jersey. A lot of people don't know this. John Zandig broke into the Independents as Icon. He was an Ultimate Warrior ripoff. He used to paint his face, put the tassels on, and he used to sell like 20 or 30 tickets to all the NWA shows, so Dennis would use him, and he really couldn't wrestle, but that was his gimmick. He was an Ultimate Warrior ripoff. That's how I first met him.
Can you give us a good Danny Doring story?
Yeah, with Danny, I mean, Danny was a guy who showed up. Danny worked hard. Danny paid his dues. I butted with heads with Danny in the past over what I would call dumb wrestling heat. But my good Danny Doring story, if you guys really want a good one, as crazy as this sounds, the best thing I can say about Danny, I mean, he worked hard, but Danny, unfortunately, both his parents passed away, I believe, before the age of 30 for Danny. So Danny actually raised his little brother from when he was like a teenager, basically on his own. So Danny is, I believe he's married, has some daughters. He has a real job, a real life, but he basically raised his brother on his own, and he suffered through some shit that nobody ever should have to. So that's the best story I can give you on Danny.
Do you have any advice for new wrestlers on what to look for when buying gear?
Make sure it looks different. Make sure it stands out. Look at pop culture. Look at comic books, superhero, sci-fi. Something would catch somebody's eye. If you dress like a fan, then you should go sit in the audience and be a fan.
In your years traveling wrestling, where are the 2 best restaurants you've been?
I would say I love Waffle House and I love IHOP.
Hardest decision you've ever made in or out of the ring?
That I couldn't do more to fight to keep Angel Williams. And the hardest decision outside the ring was getting divorced. Nice. It sucks.
All right, I'll wind it down here. Just a few more.
Yeah.
How big is Batista actually?
6'3", 280, huge dude, but bigger personality. Personality is bigger than life. Great guy.
Do you think more guys need to get real jobs after the business passes them by?
I wish they would, Devin. I wish they. I'd much rather people today look at me an example of what can be accomplished after pro wrestling than anything I ever did in my in-ring career. I actually do a lot of, with Jared Ganem and the Inside Squared Circle guys, I do a lot of consulting and talking to guys and trying to get them on the path a little bit, much more. I'd really rather guys look at what I did outside of wrestling than in it.
Was it fun working with Maven? This goes back to Maven.
Yeah, Maven was great. I loved it. We should have had a tag team title run. We were actually told we were going to, and of course, just like everything else, it got pulled out from under us. But we had heat. After we had that thing with Stone Cold Steve Austin, we should have been on a run with that.
I know you've said this earlier, you didn't mess with this, but what was the best towns for ring rats that you've seen?
I would have to, your Orlando's, Las Vegas, all that kind of stuff. I never understood the attraction, though, of messing around with a bunch of girls who everybody else did, too. Like, I just never got that.
Do you think it's ever possible for wrestling to have a union?
No, it can't, because and I don't necessarily know if it could, because at the end of the day, I'm a big fan of capitalist markets. If you work hard, but I do think that anyone who works for the WWE should be classified as an employee. You just came here basically as an independent contractor to film this. What if I told you, Devin, when you come to my house, you have to have a certain outfit on, you have to be here at a certain time, you have to leave at a certain time, you have to only eat certain things that I give you here, you have to only ask me what, like if I did all of that, you're no longer an independent contractor, you're my employee. Like in WWE, you can't wrestle for anybody else, you have to do what they tell you to do. They can easily create some 401ks so the guys can do a match. The company's worth, I believe, $8 billion now with the stock valuation. I wish I had some stock, but I don't know how. Give them health insurance and give them 401k at least. Make them employees. Like, it's not that hard. Cut down the number of people you have. Maybe get rid of 10 or 15 extra people, but I don't know, man. I don't know how they're not employees.
What are your thoughts on Billy Corgan bringing the NWA championship back?
I'm psyched for the guys involved. Any place is a good time. Any place at work is good for the guys. I don't know if it's going to work. I didn't even know the NWA was a thing, and again, I hate to say it until he was doing it. I love Nick Aldis. I'm glad Cody's got it now. He can put some prestige on it. I hope it works for them. But again, any place where the guys can get work. But that's not. I'm telling you, 6 to 9 months from now, summer of next year, I think somebody's going to get a money guy behind them. They're going to get TV. They're going to get 10 to 15 guys together, and you're going to see a promotion launch.
This is a stupid question, but Mary Kill or F? Duke the Dumpster Drosy, Triple H, Pat Patterson.
I would say Triple H for all of them. I mean, the guys, I love Pat. I never met Duke. I don't know Duke. But Pat's one of the smartest guys ever. Pat was always cool to me. But Hunter is at another level, man. Hunter is just the guy.
How crazy was the drug scene in the original ECW?
It was crazy, but nobody was ever an asshole about it. They all did. Nobody ever forced you to do anything. Everybody had their weed, their pills, their alcohol, their coke, whatever they all did. They just did their own thing. And a lot of guys went out there and worked like that, but that was their thing. I mean, nobody ever big leagued anybody or gave them a hard time or anything, man. It was the best environment ever.
Someone says they love your work in ECW and thought you were underrated. And have you ever met Bruno Sammartino?
No, I wish I could have met Bruno before he passed away. That would have been cool. And I appreciate the comment. And here's the thing, Devin. I love the fans. The fans was always good to me. Even the fans who would shit on me every now and then or talk crap, whatever. You guys paid for all of this. You guys got to give me a chance to go around the world. You guys put money in my daughter's college education. I mean, you guys took care of me. So you'll never read about a bad fan encounter with me, ever. The fans treated me great. I was always good to them back. So at least I think I was. But they let me live my dream. So.
How much did it cost in an average week to live on the road?
It depends. I was really frugal. I did all the coupons, shoppings. I looked for all the deals on hotels. We got hookups. I gave out comp tickets left and right to get pricing. If you were smart with it, you get a couple of guys to chip in with you. Several $100s a week. But that's going to be your write-offs and all that stuff too. So.
And this is a fan question because I know Lance, but they're asking if you believe he really didn't do steroids.
Lance? I don't think he did. Lance is a legitimate guy. I hated Lance for a long time until like we go back on. I don't know why I hated him too. When I first got in ECW, I did. But then when he came down here as training guys, we were really good friends, and I love Lance. He's a great guy. He churns out some good people at Storm Wrestling Academy. He's a good trainer.
Thoughts on Vince Russo?
I never met Vince. I think a lot of people bag on Vince all the time, and I don't know why, because if you're going to get on him from all the bad stuff, don't you have to give him credit for the good stuff too? Like, people only want to talk about the negative stuff he booked, but I don't know if they necessarily are giving him credit for the good stuff.
Someone says your forearms are looking huge, and the last question I'll ask is your thoughts on Paul Heyman's booking style, and do you watch today's product?
I'll watch to see my friends on there, or if nothing else is on Monday nights. Paul's booking style, it was hide the weaknesses, accentuate the positives. It was crash TV. That's what it was meant to be. He changed the policy. ECW changed the business. ECW ushered in WB Attitude Era. They did. Let's not act like it didn't happen. And he was a visionary. He was just a bad businessman. I think if he had more of an entity behind him handling the day-to-day workings of it, it would have been better. But I don't know if Paul would have played well with others in that sense, you know.
Oh, this is a good question that I forgot to ask you about. I'll slip this one in. What was the locker room reaction after RVD slapped Tazz?
We sat there in disbelief, talking about Danny Doring. Danny Doring and I was sitting right next to each other. And Rob was mad about something on a pay-per-view. Something happened. I don't even remember what it was. And we saw him do the pick-a-hand thing, and he smacked him. It was kind of like me and Danny were looking at each other. We didn't know if we should run away or what, because we didn't know if we should have seen that. And I looked at Danny, and he looked at me. We were like, oh my God, we're going to get killed. Like, we shouldn't have been here for that. And it was just weird. I wish they could have worked that out differently. That was one of the few times I saw tempers flare, especially from Rob. He was the most laid back. I love Rob Van Dam, man. Super cool guy, chill. I'm glad he... I know he had a little rough run there when he broke up. He got divorced, but he found somebody now. I just saw her not too long ago. I said, give Rob all my best when you see him. I love that guy.
We actually interviewed him, and she was in the interview with him recently. So
he's a great dude, man. Super cool guy.
Seems very happy
Yep.
too. And this, I'm shutting it down after this, but thoughts on Donald Trump?
Anybody who follows me on Facebook knows I'm a Trump guy. It's more for the gimmick of Trump. I get it. I'm a Republican. I'm not embarrassed about it. Some of the stuff he does and says is a bit outlandish, but we had 8 years of one style of thinking here in the United States of America, and then it was time for a change. So the voting public went out and they made a change. They got a Republican House. They got a Republican president. If they don't like it, guess what? They can change it again in 2 years. Me personally, I think he's going to run again in 2020. I think he'll win again. It doesn't matter who the president is in 2020 or 24, because I'm telling you, I don't think it'll be 2024, but in 2028, Dwayne Johnson will be the president of the United States. You're hearing this on this. Other people have said it. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson will 100% be the president of the United States one day. There's no doubt in my mind.
Did you ever wrestle him?
No, I wish. I met him several times in Gold's Gym out in Venice and some other place. He was always super complimentary. I would have loved to take in that rock bottom, man. It would have probably would have been meaning I made a lot of money that night, and it would have been it would have been on par with what I did with Stone Cold Steve Austin.
What's your favorite Rock movie?
I liked the Fast and Furious stuff that he did. All his stuff is gold, man. It's another guy who came in here. I don't care that he was Rocky Johnson's son. Even if he wasn't, he still would have made it. You know what I mean? Like, the guy's work ethic, his charisma, it's undeniable, unquestionable. He's just bulletproof and Teflon. Everything he touches turns to gold. He's an utter class act, and he's somebody the business can be proud of.
All right, I'm closing the fan questions. Thanks, everyone that wrote in. Where can people follow you on social media?
I only have Facebook, Deb. I mean, I'm only on Facebook under Mike Bucci. I don't have Instagram. I don't have Twitter. I don't have Snapchat. I don't have any of that stuff. I probably never will. I remain a pretty low profile. I mean, this is the only second one of these I've ever done, just because I know you personally through Meanie. He contacted me. I don't really wrestle a whole lot anymore these days. I live a family life. I'm a quiet guy. I keep to myself. It is what it is. If the right offer came around to do something behind the scenes again one day, as long as it didn't interfere with this, and if I had a little bit of a control factor to it and I had the people around me who I trusted, I might be enticed, but it would have to be the right situation.
And is there any final thought you want to say to close this off?
Thank you to the fans. You guys let me live my dream. Thank you to my friends, my family. I've always tried to do the right thing. It wasn't always popular, but I've always spoke up for myself. I've always spoke up for others. Again, you guys have given me more than I've ever could have asked for. I'm not bitter. I have no resentment towards anyone in pro wrestling. Even like people say you have heat with this guy or that guy. I don't. If they have it on their end, that's great on them. But all my wrestling heat died years ago with anyone out there. I don't give a shit. I wish you guys the best. If you see me, if you're in Louisville, Kentucky, hit me up. We'll have lunch, go have dinner. But again, if your fans need anything, find me on Facebook. For the wrestlers out there, you guys see this, just know that when the day comes and your end runs, and it does for everybody, there's life after. There's life after taking bumps. There is. So if you need help with it, let me know.